Welcome into Between Two Sprouts. Ironically, we actually have Ponto on my left
That'd been
here.
cool.
But it's close enough, right? It's close enough. Welcome to Between Two Sprouts, episode 5. Today we have a special guest. As mentioned, it is Ponto, the man himself, actually on Twitter as the Ponto, the official article. Ponto, how you doing, my man?
I'm doing well, guys. How's it going with yourselves?
Go on, Rusty boy.
Yeah, me? Okay. Yeah, I'm doing good. I'm doing good. We're chilling. I'm pumping MSQ.
I
recently,
heard.
but I thought I'm taking a slight break to do this. Bless everyone's ears and eyes with my beautiful Sprout takes.
Pumping MSQ, eh? Oh, that's an
Pumping.
interesting take. I heard your chat saying otherwise to me recently.
No. They would never. They would never say Copium Heavensward 2023. They would never say that.
I know for a fact that Russ was doing MSQ today because I had someone come into my chat and go, Russ is doing MSQ. So it must have meant you were actually doing MSQ today. So that's cool. That's good. Yeah, I mean, we'll get into that. I do as well. Just want to say thank you, everyone in chat as well, everyone in chat for being here on all the streams, but also everyone physically here in attendance. We love doing these podcasts where we have everyone together. It's really quite cute and cozy. Ponto, have you ever seen anything like it? It's so lovely, isn't it?
You guys are always so cozy.
It's so cozy. So thank you everyone for being here, and Libby for hosting. We do appreciate you hosting your house, and we'll find someone new to host at the end of this episode. But today, guys, we've got Ponto on as a guest. Now, Ponto, to start things off, because we're going to probably cover a lot of ground and probably just riff off each other, but do you want to actually, for anyone who's unaware of maybe your content thus far, when did you start getting into Final Fantasy? What sort of drew you to this game? Are you a WoW refugee like us, or what's your story with Final Fantasy?
Yeah, I'll tell you guys a little bit about it for the boys in chat. So, for myself, I started playing Final Fantasy 14 back when 2.0 came out, but I also played a little bit of 1.0. It actually goes before that. I actually was playing FF11 from 2004 up until about 2011. So I've been on this game for a long time. Now, I did take a break from the game in 2014 for real life stuff during Heavensward. It did come back during Shadowbringers. I think a lot of us probably, especially a lot of people on Twitch, probably jumped onto Twitch around 2020 during COVID era. That was myself included. That's when I jumped back into 14 and started doing content creation for 14 at that point. Started kind of covering everything that I had done before. I'm mostly known for kind of messing around, doing a bit of raiding, casual sort of social content now, but I've been in this game and it's been kind of embedded in my life for the last 20 years, basically.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I mostly know you as the man who kisses his microphone whenever anybody subscribes. That's what I know you. Oh, there it is, the famous Ponto kiss.
Go sub to him right now.
Yeah, go sub to Ponto chat. There you go. Absolutely. So that's fantastic. So you've been playing FF11. So I guess following on from that, how have you sort of seen the game develop over the years, right? Because if you've been playing since 2.0 and even 1.0 and stuff like that, me and Russ obviously both being in, well, Russ is in, you're still in technically an ARR, right, Russ?
I'm about to finish 2.3. Hopefully today. We'll see.
About to finish 2.3. Okay, sick. Nice. Hopefully today.
Yeah. Right now, I guess we can talk about it.
Yeah.
Because I'm the furthest behind. We're building a United Nation. So like a big grand company or whatever. Not grand company.
Okay.
Grand company, I believe.
I'm helping Elfie, to recruit everyone in Eorzea right now. That's where I'm at. So I think it's about to kick off. I think we're doing Crystal Tower soon.
Yes.
But yeah, I'm doing like almost a patch per day at the moment. So anti-stalling tech has been thoroughly deployed.
You probably just ran out of other side content, huh? If you've been doing everything else.
There's the answer. Yeah. There's the answer.
Yeah, there you go.
I mean, I haven't done fishing yet.
We should do that together. You gotta wait. We gotta do ocean fishing together because that's gotta be a thing.
6 months of stalling content for you, lads. I know someone who's been doing that every day for the last 6 months to try and get the world-class troller title. It's an endeavor to go through, let me tell you. You could do the
Yeah.
MSQ 3 times over before you get that one.
Perfect.
Nice. That's what we like to hear. Excellent. So yeah, so Ponto, so how have you sort of, and I'm in Heaven's Ward now, right? So Russ is finishing up ARR, I'm in Heaven's Ward. How do you sort of feel the game has been progressing and the general attitude of people in the community right now? Because from mine and Russ's perspective, we've been doing these podcast episodes and everything for us has just been so positive. We're both so ecstatic for so many reasons to be playing this game. And both of us are sort of acknowledging ourselves as Final Fantasy streamers more than WoW streamers. But is that sort of the general feeling of positivity and stuff in the community as well?
Overall, I would say yeah. There is obviously like any community sort of dippers at the minute. I think as a person who's played since the old days, but obviously had a big gap in between, I saw a big shift in gameplay and a lot of changes to the game from A Realm Reborn to now. And before that, I actually had played some 1.0. The ex I was dating at the time, she was in 1.0. I played through her as well. They took a lot from 11 jumping into 14, and kind of over time it's evolved into like, well, it's always been an alternative to WoW, but it's become closer and closer to WoW without fully adapting to that model yet. In terms of the community, it's probably one of the best ones around, but it's a very toxic positivity you can sometimes have with it, which is good. Yeah. No, it's not good. It's not good.
Yeah.
I'm trying to spin it in a good way. It can be seen as...
You're being too positive about it.
Yeah, I like to try and be positive about a lot of things, but there is some negative things about it as anything. But overall, it's definitely a step up from how you probably are used to dealing with people in WoW chat when you're doing mythic keys, for example.
Yeah.
That's more like people just saying talents, show me your talents. It's very transactional as a WoW streamer.
That is exactly the word, transactional. I mean, I stream WoW now 1 day a week on a Thursday, and I'll be honest, my WoW streams are being carried by Final Fantasy viewers. Like, it's Final Fantasy viewers asking questions about, oh, so what's going on here? What are you trying to do there? What, how do I, getting into this game, what can I do? What kind of content should I be doing? Yada yada. How do I catch up with a story? Why is this sword here in the ground? All that kind of stuff. And then I can see as the hours go by, like the Final Fantasy viewers dip out and they go do other stuff, obviously, because they don't just want to watch 8 hours of WoW. But then I'm basically just left with a lot of talents, question mark. Is Feral good, question mark. It's more transactional, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. The community is just very hyper competitive in WoW, whereas Final Fantasy, it seems like there's people with more substance to them in terms of their viewing experience and what they're interested in. Like we said, ocean fishing, right? People are asking for it. So do you feel that that's the way for you as well, Ponto, as somebody who's been playing FF for a long time? Do you and streaming now for a good few years?
I feel that the good thing about 14 is, and then you probably have noticed it yourselves too, nothing ever really becomes fully irrelevant. It always has kind of got some reason to go back and do it. For example, even the coils that you guys have done already, one of the achievements for Blue Mage, to get a mount, you have to do the Savage version of some of those coils to be able to get that mount. So there's always reason to go back and do some of that old content, which is something maybe World of Warcraft maybe does specifically only really for glamour. Whereas in our game, there's a lot more to kind of cover. There's a lot more to try and do as well. And it's kind of nice in that way. You don't ever really feel like you're in a rush to get to anything, but you also know you have a lot to do if you want to do that there. If you want to do more than just simply the Savage and Ultimate side rating, which if you do only want to do that, then you may run out of stuff quickly. But that's another story.
Yeah, I think that basically perfectly describes my playthrough so far. Just like, haven't felt rushed at all, have felt like I have almost endless things to do. Every time I look back at my list of stuff I unlocked at level 50, I barely scratched the surface, and I didn't do any MSQ for straight 2 months, where I've just been like, okay, we did the coils, and then people asked me to do fishing. People today were like, when's Palace, deep dungeons, and like I've still got all this stuff, and I think the list just, the amount of stuff you unlock becomes more and more and more as you get higher.
There's a Savage coils as well, right?
I do, yeah. We should do that at some point.
We should team up for that, actually. That would be really cool.
Yeah,
They're
because it's
pretty
just
fun, dude.
four fights, isn't it? It's the second coil, so
Is it just 4? Okay, yeah, we should do
I
that.
think
We should
so,
plan
yeah.
that. We should plan that
Mm.
out. Maybe
Yeah,
a
that
nice
would be
little
good.
Christmas coiling, perhaps.
Christmas coiling.
Enjoy Savage Turn 9. That's all I'm gonna say.
Yeah. There was one other thing I was going to say though. I think that's like you mentioned about there being achievements through old content and stuff. We do have that in WoW, but the thing that WoW drops the ball on is being able to make that challenging in any particular way. Like you can still go back and there's like a mount or a glam or a title or something for going and killing an old boss, but there's no way to like. That's probably one of my favorite things so far about Final Fantasy, the fact that there is the scaling down tech in the game on literally everything. You can go back and do a TBC raid on WoW to get a title or a mount or something, but you're gonna just like cough in the direction of the boss and it dies. There's like no toggle to even make that at all appropriately challenging.
Before Classic WoW became a thing, people used to do Project 60. Do you remember that? Where, for anyone in chat who doesn't know, so because WoW doesn't have like a like a scaling system where you can jump down to order content and make it relevant, people used to try and level to level 60 and try and basically recreate the feeling of doing the old raids in Classic, like Molten Core and stuff like that. So they would have to basically, I don't know, you couldn't take talents, I think, because there's been many changes over time. So you had to like purposely hindrance yourself and like handicap yourself in order to execute it. You couldn't have certain abilities. You had to cap your gear at a certain item level. There's like these really weird conditions to try and create somewhat of that experience, but it was all purely community done.
Yeah, it's like a self-found thing where like it'd be great. It's hard to organize those, so usually it was a streamer thing. It was like a kind of like the whole OnlyFans thing going on now in Classic Hardcore.
Yeah.
Where that's like big streamer push. They did like a Project 60, so they get all the WoW streamers, whoever they are, and they come in like, okay, you can, there's 100 levels in the game. I think the last time they did it was like BFA or something, right? Whatever that was. It was like 100 levels in the game, but you can only level up to 60, and then you can only take like, the talents that you have access to, or even just like you could take a spec but not talent into anything because it's weird how it worked. And then you're only allowed to wear like gear to that level, and you can turn off XP gain once you hit, well, at any point actually in WoW, but they would turn it off at 16 and they would go and try and go through all the old raids. The thing is, like, the systems and there's all the different borrowed power and the talent systems have changed multiple times and stuff like that since that content was relevant. So it was still like they would just walk over it. These were 40-man raids and they were killing it with like 10 people. Like even at the appropriate level, but
do you
wasn't challenging enough.
I want to like feed that into you then, but like, because you can go back and scale things, and we've been even doing optional dungeons. I know Russ did them as well. We did all the optional dungeons. You go do Pharaoh Sirius, you drop it mine so like Midnight Level No Echo, you go through and you wipe on the first boss for a good half an hour or something. It can take a while. Is this something that is a streamer only situation and a streamer only privilege? Is it something that we're only experiencing because we're new to the game, or is this something that does sort of permeate through the wider community in your experience as someone who's been in the scene for longer? Like, are we just basically a kid in a candy shop thinking that this is actually a better situation than it truly is, or is it actually as good as we think it is?
I would say it's a bit of both. There is people that do what you guys are doing at the minute, but it's definitely not commonplace. For example, obviously you guys have done the extremes from A Realm Reborn. A lot of people wouldn't go back and do those synced the way you guys have did it. They wouldn't even do it like synced with item level cap. They would just go in unsynced because they're just like, I want my horse and get me out of here. I want to get off and do something else. I want to go ERP and Balmung or whatever it be. So you're gonna find that you guys do have a little bit of that nice thing where people are wanting to jump in and try the stuff as organic, or I guess as close to the original content would be. I personally, when a lot of friends came in to play the game in 2021, when you had that WoW Exodus, a lot of guys came in. I was one of those lads who, and I wasn't really a big streamer at the time. I would always try and drag people in to do it as original as possible. I was one of the guys that saw it when it was original, so I remembered the fights. I remember teaching people the fights back then, so I still had that info kind of bouncing around in my head. A lot more people remember it now because Asmongold and a lot of those guys went through obviously after that too. Uh, I would say you'll notice more in Heavensward and Stormblood. There'll be less and less people who will know that content when you're trying to do it synced. I
Cool.
will also
Okay.
say that the difficulty for the Savage, because you will eventually jump into Savage. Are you guys going to be doing all the Savages or just mainly all the normal versions of all the rating?
So,
I don't know. Depends on time investment for me.
you got somewhere to be.
Well, no, you know me. I love to stall, but if it's gonna take like a month each
It'll
time,
take
well,
long.
it'll take longer than a month each time. I think even for me, like coils was like a little longer than I would have wanted.
It's a heavy
so
price to do coils, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think I'll definitely do the normals. I want to do everything that I can do on like min eye level, but I think when it comes to like savages and stuff, I'll probably leave that to more like the end game, if even that, right? Like I think you do it right, but you do one clear per patch basically, right, Ponto? Like you clear each fight one time and then you're kind of like done with it.
So, I mean, for us, when you're on current content, you have what? So the patch content for 14 is very structured in a way. Every 2 patches is when we get our Savage patch. So every 0.0, 0.2, and 0.4, there are 4 fights. Some consider it 5 because the 4 fight sometimes is broken into 2. You don't need to worry about that until later. Every single patch comes out with a new extreme and also an Unreal, which is a throwback fight to an older extreme that's been synced up to level 90. For example, we currently have a Heavensward fight that Psy, you will have done quite recently.
Oh,
it's been brought to
yeah, I
level 90.
can't wait, dude. Okay.
It's a great extreme, by the way.
Cool.
That's a great extreme. Enjoy.
It's on a roulette as well, right? The extreme changes per patch.
So it changes per patch. Not really a roulette, but they will be like, yo, this is coming out. We're going to be letting you guys do this here for this patch cycle. Every 1, 2, 3, 4. So every single one, and they always drop a new one. This most current one, you guys will probably have the chance to do it together, even if you wanted to. I could even do it with you by that point, because this is going to be a long patch at this point. 0.5 is our last one we get until the next expansion, which will be dropping in the early summer of next year.
Right. And then that fight will go into like the vault, and they'll put a new one in the extreme. Do they ever rotate back around, or is it kind of like if you miss it,
they haven't yet? This is actually missable content. I mean, missable content in doing it at current level with the current toolkit. They haven't went back around to doing it yet. For example, in Shadowbringers, all the extremes you guys have done, when you did Leviathan, when you did Titan and stuff, they did that at level 80. That was during Shadowbringers at the time. They never brought it back to do it in Endwalker, so they didn't.
Okay.
Yeah, they moved into Heavensward fights in Endwalker mostly.
Yeah, cool. Okay, so to sort of round that off a little bit, so the experience that we're getting is something that might happen, like, some people can experience it independent of streaming, but it's not mega popular, perhaps?
Yeah, I would say that would be accurate. There is people that definitely do it. Some
like
people
probably
love that
Discords
challenge.
and stuff. Like if you find the right Discord, it'll be there.
Yeah, there's Discord for it for sure.
Reddits, stuff like that. Yeah.
Reddit. Yeah. Okay, that's cool. And I guess, like you say, as we get through the higher expansions, this stuff will be more difficult. I've heard, because I wanted to do Savage of the Heavensward raid, but people have told me like
heard that one was clunky.
Yeah, I've heard A4S is like just a...
It was known as a raid destroyer back in the day.
Didn't it almost kill raiding in the game?
It did. The current... So the most recent... sorry, not more recent. During Heavensward had the lowest population 14 ever had during the Midas going into the second raid tier patch of Savage. Because at that time, they were still trying to figure out side content for casual players. They had something which is actually no longer in the game anymore, an old version of the Diadem. The very first Alexander tier was so heavily tuned that a lot of people just simply couldn't do it. It would take them maybe a month before they get through the raid tier. Oh, just wait till you try it last. I remember Asmongold actually doing it around the time almost Endwalker was dropping. I don't know if he ever cleared A4. I remember him doing A3. I don't know if he even got past A4 whenever he quit.
that was just one fight that was just so bad.
It's
It almost
those
destroyed
fights
rating.
are tight. They were
Right.
so fucking tight.
So you hear
So
that
what's
mid-eye level,
yeah?
yeah.
Well,
Don't
I
make
was
the same
like,
mistake twice.
I was talking to my chat today about it actually, because I'm getting to the point now where I'm finishing the Heaven's Ward post patch. I'm about to finish 3.2. Like I've finished that today basically. So I got like one more patch, and then I'm done with Heaven's Ward technically, and then we're setting up for Stormblood. So I'm like, right, when I finish 3.3, I'm gonna start doing all the side content, optional dungeons, raid, extremes, everything like that. And I was like, oh, do I do Savage? That would be cool. But then everyone in chat was sort of like, oh, I don't know, bud, it might be a bit tough. And then I was like, well, the problem is that if I skip Savage and then Russ goes and does it, then it's going to make me look like a bitch. So it's one of those
You already look like one, it's fine.
where it's like, we can make a gentleman's agreement that neither of us does Savage. It's something I want to at least dip my toe in and maybe put a couple hours into, a couple lockouts of A4S and C. And if I go, oh my god, we've wiped for 4 hours at 90% health, like, whoa, okay, then yeah, maybe we just dip out, and if it's not enjoyable. But if it's really fun for people, then I'd be down to do it. But I'll see, because again, you got to look at timescale, right? You don't want people to just sort of completely lose interest in the content you're doing. I did just go back and do Ifrit Extreme with Astro. So it was my first time healing, and like literally I got to level 50 on Astro straight into Ifrit, which was really fun. Trial by fire, literally. And it was a really fun experience, and it's made me sort of question whether I potentially want to be a healer main, because it just felt so, yeah, it was that good. And I think especially as Astro, where Ifrit is such a tight fight to heal, where you don't really have free globals to DPS, especially if you're rezzing and stuff like that. So you're trying to buff your group, and that's where all of your OGCDs and stuff are going, but you're trying to like register the fight, heal, the buffing of people, and there's a lot to deal with. So I definitely recommend going and doing that, Russ. But it was fun. It was fun.
There was quite a lot of healer responsibility on it for actually, like positioning wise, and then obviously you got to actually put your throughput when you're breaking the nails and stuff as well, right? Like between nail
and the healers get a debuff that rotates, so you have to constantly move out from the group, and
exactly. Or you push people back.
And so there's quite a lot there, but it was very, very enjoyable. But yeah, Russ, I don't know as well if you've got some stuff that you wanted to jump in with Ponto. I just sort of led the charge, but I don't know if you've got some stuff that you specifically wanted to jump in with today as well.
Not off the top of my head right now.
Not off the top yet. Yeah, cool.
We'll keep going like this.
Yeah, no, that's fine. That's fine. I guess we've covered some good ground so far in terms of things to expect, but I don't know. I'm lost now because I'm busy talking about myself. I'm lost. I'm trying to think of some other stuff that we want to cover. Is there anything in Ponto that you want to jump onto?
I guess really the main thing for me would be, so you guys have both gotten Free Realm Reborn yourself, most of Heaven's Ward, you're in the post stuff. I guess so far, what's been your experience of playing the game so far, the community? What in 14 do you think is the best thing they do that WoW currently doesn't do?
For me, I kind of touched on it earlier, but I think for me the best thing is the scaling down, because it just gives you so much, like any game that doesn't invalidate its own content. I mean, I think WoW just does it particularly bad rather than FF doing it amazingly good, right? But the comparison and relativity kind of makes it night and day. So that would be like my favorite thing, just because for me, I like having more things to do. I feel like when I run out of things, that's when I just start like burning out, and I feel like especially with streaming, I'm kind of just like on to be on kind of thing.
Yeah.
Rather than on with a purpose. And I remember when I fell into that kind of rut when I used to stream WoW, just every day felt the same. I was like doing, repeating things that I've already done. There was nothing to really look forward to. And then that's what kind of motivated me to make a raiding guild in WoW, like a mythic raiding guild. And then I finally like got some purpose back into my logins each day, and therefore my streams, right? Because I'll just play on stream really. And sometimes I even call myself playing off stream as well. Because of that, like it gave me a purpose. So I think like because of the whole scaling down tech, it's going to take me longer to to get to max level because of doing all the stuff like as I go. I probably won't do everything as I go. Like maybe, you know, for example, we were just talking about the Heavensward Savages. Like that could be something I come back to in a year's time even, and be like, you know what, maybe I will give that a crack kind of thing. Because I heard that like Stormblood is where the raiding kind of like really kicks off.
Yeah.
Like that's when they kind of like perfected their formula, and everything Stormblood onward is just like really, really, really good.
Stormblood is just fantastic in terms of content in general. What we were talking about this recently on my stream a few days ago. In terms of like pure content the game ever got, Stormblood gave the most. In terms of just variety of stuff, you had. Oh, I'm not going to go into all the stuff, and maybe you guys want to learn about that over time, but in terms of multitude of different types of content, Stormblood is the one. That and Shadowbringers did okay with.
So can you set up camp in Stormblood for a little bit of time? And
you could, yeah. Stormblood has a lot in there to do. You could honestly doing Savages in Stormblood is also a treat as well. They're some of the best raids. I think a lot of people who have experienced all the different eras. I've went back and done some of the older stuff that I had missed whenever I had taken my break. Stormblood for me had a lot of stuff in it that I still will go back and do to this day. I mean, you've heard of Eureka probably. I love Eureka. I will go back and do Eureka. This will be my 4th time probably doing it. In the next couple of months, I'll probably be jumping back in. There's some great content there. It has a deep dungeon. It has Eureka, great raid tier, best alliance raid in my opinion. Just there's a lot of good stuff there. Deep dungeon too.
Yeah, awesome. Okay, so there's some good stuff to look forward to and so on. But that's the thing, is I think me and Russ are both under pressure to sort of feel like we got this expansion looming, you know, and it's like catch up because Dawn Trail's coming. But at the same time, I was even gonna ask you, Russ. I was gonna say, are you actually conscious of that? Are you trying to be ready in time? But I actually don't think being ready for Dawn Trail is necessarily a good thing, because you can't even stream the content the first few days or weeks anyway. So I think it's just something to enjoy even more when we eventually get to it. So I definitely want to stop off and take breaks and do these bits of content that, just the fact that you can keep everything relevant is so awesome.
I mean, the actual Savage tiers, so if you're looking to jump right into current content when you're jumping into Dawn Trail, they don't even drop the Savage tier until 1 month into the actual expansion. So you're really not really in a rush to get the level 100 or whatever it's going to be. I think it's 100. Yeah. There's no rush for that, to be honest with you. For me, for example, I jumped into the most recent Savage tier at the beginning of Endwalker. I didn't start the story of Endwalker until 3 weeks after the expansion dropped. I just leveled side jobs to 100 or 90 at that time and just messed around a little bit, honestly.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, because that's kind of a predicament that I'm in with WoW right now, where I want to jump back into raiding because the mythic, or this raid that we're in, Amirdrasil and WoW, looks so good. Every single boss, even when I was doing it on the easiest difficulty, just it felt like a fun raid. And the more I'm playing it on the easier difficulties, the more I'm going, oh man, I really want to do this on Mythic. The problem is that in a couple weeks, when the raid tier is sort of done with, it's, well, probably like a month or two for the average gamer.
More.
I'm just going to have missed out. Yeah, well, more, right? Like 2-3 months. But I'm going to have missed out. And even now, Russ, you say like more, but most guilds are going to be getting through 2, 3, 4 out of 9 Mythic within the first couple weeks, right? So you sort of come in and maybe you trial with a guild on, say, the 7th or 8th boss out of 9, but you don't exactly get the full experience. And you do just...
from one up.
The going through...
7 you miss.
Yeah. Exactly, right? Going through fresh raid with everybody, like day one, have we got our pots, have we got our food buffs, have we ready to go? All right, let's jump into it, is way more exciting, and I feel like you lose that. Whereas when we've come and done content in this game, I don't feel like I'm doing old content. I feel like I'm with everyone else, weirdly.
Yeah, I mean, you're like the common denominator, right? So everyone kind of comes down to you, but you still run out the gates at the same speed, kind of thing. It feels like, well, especially it might be like streamer privilege in a way, because like people are coming and we're like like we both did like a semi-static that we organized for the coils and things like that. But you know, everyone feels like they're on the same kind of level, and it doesn't feel like. I think there's even people like in my chat who've been like, oh yeah, I've never done this piece of content and stuff like that, and so it's like it's a first time fresh experience.
Yeah,
for,
that's
like,
been
a
really
lot of
fun
people as well. Yeah, like some people, there were a lot of people who are like, oh yeah, like I ran through coils unsynced at level 90. It took me 10 minutes. I did it for the story to see the cutscenes and stuff. But like then we had like one of my mods organizing like not a min eye level group, but just another synced group on the side of my
cool.
Discord for the people that weren't in my run, but still wanted to like attempt it on like at least somewhat challenging thing. I think that would be a fun thing to organize in the future, just like, you know, maybe like a once a year kind of thing, like let's go do coils again. Yeah, but like
I think that's very important. Yeah,
to like interface with the community, but also give people a chance to do it. Like it wouldn't be blind for me anymore, but that could make it fun because then I can just focus on like leading people and be like, okay, it's not going to take years and years and years because I'm not blind. I'm just going to tell you like when to go here, what to do that, explain the strat, like I've always kind of done with like viewer raids when I used to do those in WoW, and when I've done, you know, being a raid leader for a Mythic guild in WoW and stuff, I've got a lot of that kind of experience under my belt anyway. So, and I always used to, you know, pride myself on helping people out, like get mounts and get clears and stuff like that. So I think, you know, I think Ponto does something similar. I've seen you doing a lot of Unreals recently, right? Like,
yeah, a lot of my content is based around taking viewers in who are like newer to raiding and just teaching them, kind of picking at certain things they're doing wrong. I don't play a bunch of different jobs, but I like just by eyeballing things, you can kind of tell this is wrong, that's wrong. Kind of give them the right habits to what they kind of need to do, you know?
So you're telling them they're just doing everything
wrong. Yeah,
you're
telling
them you guys are just bad. Stop, okay? You're just bad.
Stop being bad, just be good. Yeah, I think that's something. I know, Russ, you mentioned about streamer privilege, and there are sometimes comments that you can get. I think I've only probably had one or two of these types of comments. You really don't get them often, but you get some people that say, oh yeah, but you're only having this experience because you're a streamer. But and fair enough, that might be somewhat the case, but there are Discords out there, there's Reddit and stuff, there are ways out there for you to do this stuff. You just have to sort of find it on your own back, right? You actually have to look for it. It's not just going to come to you. But what I think is really cool that we have the power to do, all of us actually, not just me and Russ, but Ponto as well, is provide avenues for people in the community to experience these things using our sort of power, using our powers for good in a way, right? Like something that really I'm doing now in my Discord is I've got LFG channels for FF and for WoW, actually. So a lot of people that have been playing Final Fantasy or watching me play Final Fantasy have started jumping into trying World of Warcraft out. So I've been helping them. We did a normal run of the new raid yesterday on stream. So we took a few people in that didn't have any experience or little experience, took them in. Also been doing Mythic Plus and doing keys with people that haven't got a bunch of WoW experience but have started playing the game to just give them a nice little sort of safe exposure to the game. But I'm also doing that with Final Fantasy, where people can go type in the LFG system if they're looking for a group or want to be involved with something, and then they can form groups that way, and it's been quite successful, I think, so far. But like you say as well, Russ, it's something that I want to actively try and pursue later down the line when I'm a little bit further through the game, where it's like, right, guys, today we're going to do coils. Who's new? Or, well, not just coils, but like any of the future raids, right? Maybe we do a raid in Stormblood or something. We go, right, we're going to do this raid in Stormblood on Savage. We're going to go through at walking pace and get everyone up to speed. Who wants to get involved? I think that's something that we can try and help create. And Ponto, you say you're already doing that stuff, so I think that's great.
You can do it on a larger scale as well. The great thing is, like, some people will be like, streamer privilege. Yes, it is. But that's a great thing because it enables people who wouldn't get into raids normally or wouldn't get into a certain type of content because they're, you know, anxious or whatever it be. You give them the ability to do it. Or there's content that is older and it seems a lot less accessible. For example, I was talking about Eureka earlier. In the summer there, it just passed. Eureka for you guys is a larger man piece of content. At the end of completing Eureka, there's a raid, and it's very specific to this here type of content. A lot of stuff in 14 that you've seen so far is either 4-man for dungeons, 8-man for raids, or 24-man for alliance. It's very structured like that for the whole game. but Eureka has something in it called BA, Baldician Arsenal, and it's a
What you call me,
64-man
mate?
piece of content. So it's a 64-man piece of content, which is very different than everything else the game currently has. It is a lot more large man. So because of it being older content and less accessible to people, one of the things I did on stream there last year was get people leveled up in it. And I reached out to a friend of mine who used to play 11 with me, actually. Runs BA runs, so he does on Crystal. We recorded the highest number of people who got a first-time clear doing Baldician Arsenal for the first time they've ever had. We got 42 people. Yeah, 42 people of the group that they took in. Their first ever clear for the thing. It was
That's
nice
awesome.
little thing for him to be able to do. Yeah, and that's things that we as streamers are able to do. We're able to facilitate bringing people in to try that sort of stuff.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah.
That's great. Did Square Enix send you a little plaque or something like that? That'd be nice, wouldn't it?
I wish. They did send me some goodies after I got back from FanFest, but I think I was just like random chancery.
Ah, that's nice though.
I even had a couple people just then in my chat being like, one day I'll clear BA, one day I'll clear BA, maybe I'll clear BA one someday. Like there's
We're gonna be
definitely
setting up on EU soon.
Exactly. Obviously there's a demographic of people there who it's like one of those things. It's like
It's a really
if
fun
it were
event.
organized, I would attend, but you know they're not going to go out their way to organize it because it sounds.
I think sometimes, and this is something I'm guilty of as well. Like, I'll want to play something or do a piece of content, and I'm like, I can't be bothered to like do it though. And then someone comes along who has more organizing, like more power. You go, oh, cool. So for example, I wanted to play like Classic WoW recently, and I was like, oh, I want to play, but I don't really know how to jump into it. And then Scripe put together like a Classic WoW guild, and then I was like, oh, cool, I'll piggyback off of that. So I think it's that kind of like behavior that people will latch onto, and that's why like being able to facilitate that stuff is really, really good. But Ponto, you asked me, so what was the original question? You asked me as well, like, what am I most enjoying about Final Fantasy, or
you wouldn't be able to get from WoW? What would you say is the biggest thing that you've taken from this game so far that, you know, if you tried getting this from WoW, it just wouldn't be the same sort of experience?
So, as a streamer or as a player? Because I feel like
overall,
my answer is very different.
You could look at two different. You could look
at two different answers there. Yeah.
So, as a player, yes, I think. So, I want to say, like, Russ has already done scaled content, so I don't think there's any need for me to repeat that. But yes, scaled content is fantastic. I think the fact that there's no, like, the server structure is still intact. So what I mean by that is you have global release. When raids come out, everybody gets it. When the new not even raids, but like Island Sanctuary or like whatever new, if we get a new zone like Eureka or Boja or whatever, like everyone gets it at the same time. That is amazing because I'm sitting in EU and I'm watching NA get access to all the new story, all of the new like zones, the new content, the new quest things, the new raids, all of that 24 hours before I can. And it's just such a weird, jarring experience every single time. But we get global release for a new expansion. So that's the only time that WoW truly feels great, when it's like we're all getting to experience it together. It's really frustrating not having global access to things because
Have they explained why they do that, by the way?
Have they explained it? I don't think they've ever explained it.
No. They've just said it's not really, like, not something they plan to change. They haven't really said why it exists in the first place.
Weird business model, I have to say. Okay.
I think it's probably
when they do like the global release. Like so I said just then, it's like they clearly can do it. They have like the technology and the know-how to.
Yeah, because they do it for expansions.
Yeah, but they just refuse to do it for patches. And then you have the whole NA beta testers. Basically, it's like the kind of meme of it. Like they test it. They get it a day early, so they beta test it, but they also deal with a lot of the bugs and stuff, so it's like a double-edged sword for EU. But yeah, you have to just sit there like the day before you're getting it. You're just like, well, I guess I'll watch streams of other people enjoying this, and
then
it's
you
like
then you know it already. That's the worst thing about MMOs, in my opinion, nowadays, is whenever you know so much about it already, just jumping into it. As an old-school MMOer, one of the things I always love the most about jumping into something is the blindness of it all. I guess I mean it's the same for you guys with raids. It's just in general with MMOs, you jump into something without really knowing everything about it. That sense of adventure for being able to explore and see things. Once you have that info already there, or it's already been done because it's already out in advance somewhere else, it kind of takes a little bit of the magic away, you know?
Yeah, like PTR is a thing with WoW. That's a big offender.
Beta,
but it does seem
yep.
they are acknowledging that now. Like with the whole classic WoW, there's a new thing coming out. I think next week, like literally a week.
6 days, I think. But yeah,
6 days.
very
Yeah,
soon.
30th. There's a thing called Season of Discovery coming out with classic WoW, and they like this is the first thing, to my recollection, that they haven't PTR tested or done like a beta on or anything like that. So it does seem like they are kind of listening to the community, and they've at least been like, they haven't taken it away from like retail WoW or anything like that, but they've just decided like this one version of one tiny part of their game, they've been like, this part won't get tested. And I think it's like this itself is a test to see like how that goes when they launch it. And it's just like, if it's a buggy mess and they decide that they still need to PTR test, or if people are like in awe almost at like the adventure again, like you mentioned, Ponto, and that's like something that I feel like personally for me I've got back from playing FF, because I've never been someone to get like invested in PTR stuff with WoW. Like I find it very boring and like pointless, to be honest. People are sat there like day one PTR comes up for a new patch and everyone's like, oh my god, my class is so bad. It's like, it's going to be on the PTR for at least 3 months. It's going to be so many iterations. It's going to be so many changes, and people are like dooming about like the patch or dooming about their class, and it's like, it's all kind of like pointless. Like, yes, if it released that day, maybe they'd have to like make some changes, but I guess throughout the PTR cycle, those things get addressed, and that's why they don't release in like a bad state or whatever. So you can say like it has some meaning there, but yeah, it just like listening to people go on about it is just the worst thing, I think. And like having that discovery, like you mentioned, like the sense of adventure is something that I didn't know I missed until it kind of slapped me in the face with FF with the whole blind rating thing. And that's like, I think Psy said the same, like some of the most fun that we've had.
The fact that you had the most fun raiding ever with coils, and it wasn't just me, legitimized that as a thing. And I think it shows just how important that it was reinforced by both of us, you know? It wasn't just one of us going, oh, this was amazing, and the other one's like, yeah, it's alright.
Yeah. Especially it's like, I'd say like my experience raiding in WoW probably is bigger than yours.
Yeah.
So like I've done it every which way, you know, like I've done the Karma Sutra WoW raiding. Yeah. and like I've done, you know, bad guilds in like the world rank thousands and thousands. I've done the super casual stuff. I've done the like early level mythic. I've done a whole rise, you know, from like starting out, becoming a good player. And then back down again when I stopped playing, and then I've led guilds, multiple guilds. I've been officers in guilds. I've been just a raider in guilds. I've been kicked from guilds. Like I've done everything. Like I've experienced like every side of like what raiding in WoW has to offer.
You've been in racist guilds, homophobic guilds.
I have,
sexist guilds.
I've been, Oh yeah, I've been kicked out of racist guilds for calling them out for being racist. Yeah. I've been in literally everything. And even then, I still say that like blind raiding was the most fun I had. And don't get me wrong, like, raiding in WoW can be fun. I think in like a pre-made group of people not taking it too seriously. Like, say for example, I know we talked about this a little bit at FanFest, where we were kind of like, because like the WoW players or the like ex-WoW players or the WoW veterans and stuff, we were kind of like first base touch with like the FF creators like yourself, and we were like, you know, everyone started talking. Like I know you, I know Siori.
Wait, sorry, Russ, did you just say you got to first base with the Final Fantasy creator? Which one?
Don't even start me with this. Don't even start with this. I swear to God, man. There's some gossips here.
Sorry, go on.
We'll leave it at that. Don't kiss and tell, you know.
Yeah.
But yeah, like I know Ponto and Siori and a few others. Like I know Arthas was interested in this. I don't know if Zeno was. That and the whole potentially like trying out WoW. Like if we got like a big collab thing together, and like let's say just went like we started with like heroic, right? Like let's just jump into, for example, Admirasil,
I
blind
want to do
heroic.
that right now.
Like it would be so fun, right? Like we all like boost the character. Well, I mean, yeah, we could boost the character.
Story skip.
Yeah. Well, let's say WoW story. we could all like get a fresh thing character and like gear up together with some like M+ groups, and then just jump into like blind heroic raiding. That would be like really fun, right? Don't need to do mythic because then it's like 20 people and it's a bit of an asshole. Like the good thing of heroic raiding is it's flexy, so you can go in with 12 people or 15 people, and you can kind of make it work. Like mythic raiding, it's like you have to have 20 people. It's like 20 or bust, which is much harder to organize, right? But yeah, like if we did a big like FF streamer collab thing, tries WoW or something on the new expansion release, maybe that could be really fun. Like, when the next expansion comes out, it gives you like 2 weeks to kind of gear up and get into it. Everyone starts fresh. Like that's the whole thing. That's WoW's specialty, nullifying and invalidating all their previous content and efforts. So everyone starts like completely fresh on the same page. We can go in and just like let's say like go to a heroic, just work through heroic, maybe like do it 1 day a week for like 3 or 4 weeks or something, and then we can all quit the game. It's like I feel like back to my kind of like original statement, which was like I've done all different kinds of raiding, and I was gonna say WoW raiding is fun, but I feel like Sai said earlier, with the whole like everyone gets their potion, like new patch comes out, everyone's got their like crafted gear. They're like, oh, how do I like gear up really quick? Like which mythic plus do I want to farm? Where do I target specific pieces and items that I want? Like let me get my consumables. Let me study the mechanics and try and work out what's going on. And then like you go in, and like the first 2 weeks or so is really fun, and then I feel like after that point it just becomes like quite sloggy. And like there's raid tiers where it's taken like 3 months to clear, where you're raiding 2 days a week for 3 months, and like the roster problem, like I mentioned, 20 people, that's a bitch in itself. That's an entirely separate like boss that you're constantly fighting against, with people can't make it to raids unless you've got the luxury of having like 30 people at your disposal. You'll never have a problem. But if you're like most guilds, they have like 20 to 23 people, and if for some reason like 3 or 4 people can't show on a particular day, you're screwed. You can't play, right? Like you just straight up can't play. So that's a really rough side of WoW raiding.
Do you get any of that in FF, Ponto? Really? Like I know it's only 8 players, but do you run into similar situations?
I mean, there's people that do race the world first. There's people that do week 1 prog. I think similar to what you were kind of talking about earlier, Sai, where you feel like you were kind of missing out by not jumping into the raid tier early. You do get that kind of with Savage tiers whenever they first drop, because people want to go into them blind. A large part of the raiding community will do that there. There's a lot of people who play World of Warcraft who literally activate 14 for those specific windows for raid tiers. They will activate it like a week in advance before the Savage drops now, because the way they do things now in 14, they've done this in Endwalker, is they'll drop the normal version, and then they'll drop the Savage 1 week after. Generally, what a lot of the raid the world first or race the world first people will do is in that first week they'll do all the prep stuff. They'll get their gear melded, they'll find their GCDs, they'll do a bit of practice. They'll get them.
Watch a Joe-Cat guide.
Look at some Joe-Cat guides to know how bad their job is. Standard stuff, and then they will go hard. So they will for that. Basically, about 3 or 4 days. Savage doesn't really take too long for like experienced raiders to clear from fresh. They're more mechanically driven DPS checks that they're not overly difficult. Like you can generally kind of eyeball things, and just by using your eyes and looking at debuffs and stuff, you can kind of figure things out pretty quickly. Normally you can do it within a week. There's kind of the idea of it, and then you just re-clear to farm gear after that. But yeah, people will jump into that in the first week because the FOMO of missing out while it's fresh is definitely a big thing for a lot of raiders in 14 with that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, cool. Yeah, that's interesting then. So I guess that's less of an issue then with like roster issues, progging for months and months and months and months, and going in that cycle like you were sort of alluding to, Russ. Did you have anything else that you were leading into with that as well, Russ, by the way? Or were you just sort of
I was just
stating
kind of
things.
just talking about like the WoW scene in general, so that we can maybe draw some comparisons. Like, I guess none of us have played both yet, so like, you know, I like me and you have extensive WoW experience. Ponto has extensive FF experience, but there's no one of us which has just played both right now. So later on we can like make a more direct comparison, but we've kind of just got to take our experience and Ponto's and try and like meld it together at this point.
Yeah, it's kind of
Yeah.
doing a little amalgamation of things here, but I think it's an
Yeah.
interesting look at different perspectives of stuff and understanding. I think what's nice with having Ponto on right now is that he can dispel any myths or encourage them further, sort of thing. Like, you can even us out a bit, because me and Russ have been so overwhelmingly positive about everything. And I know that I was leading into this, I was saying about something I've loved about Final Fantasy is global release, but it's also just about the fact that the server infrastructure, where on WoW we've got phasing and sharding, where the people on your server, it's kind of like you've got these like, kind of like having a bunch of reflections, you know, where it's not like you're on, like the people around you aren't the people on your server. They are, but that you can't see them, and then you see an amalgamation of like different groups of people, and you have people from other servers as well. Whereas with Final Fantasy, I know that I can be questing in a zone, and then a couple hours later, I can continue questing and happen upon the same person within a couple hour window and be like, oh, we both progressed together, sort of. And you get that feeling of, oh, we're in this together, we're both going through this journey right now, which is nice. Even if you don't necessarily interact with that person, just seeing someone and then seeing them later down the line, or maybe you jump into a dungeon and you go, oh, I remember this person, I was questing and I just saw them, and now they're in my dungeon like 4 days later. Whoa.
You'll definitely see on the story. Whenever you're doing the story, you'll definitely see that a lot more. The MSQ people, let's say you're on 2.2, you're both talking to the same quest giver, having to go out and do the same fetch quest, stuff like that there. You will generally find it and stuff like that. You will find at level 90, everyone kind of plays everywhere, whereas it's not real. It does have that sort. It doesn't really have an open world aspect to it. It's kind of one of my biggest criticisms about 14.
Right. Okay.
I don't. My biggest criticism is a lot of these big, beautiful areas, especially some of the ones you have yet to see yet. They don't get utilized enough, in my opinion. Like, there's some absolutely amazing places you'll visit in Stormblood, Shadowbringers, and Endwalker, and the way they utilize them after you finish the story, I think, is very underwhelming, in my opinion. You'll get a better feel for that there when you get to it.
That's a similar thing. I mean, Russ, like, for me, that just makes me think it's the same in WoW. As soon as you're done with your world quests on a new expansion launch or a new zone, like right now, there's the new zone that's just been released in the Emerald Dream. And that's where everyone's going to do their stuff before the raid and the new seasonal stuff comes out. But as soon as the new seasonal stuff comes out, the only people that are left in that zone are people that are just sort of catching up. But even then, it's not exactly like this, like, super interactive MMO. It just feels like you're running around doing your solo missions, and there just happens to be people around you. I don't know, maybe it's just a change of perspective, because in Final Fantasy I look around and I go, wow, this is amazing, Jesus is sitting on that bench in Limsa Lominsa every day. But then in WoW I'm just like, oh, this is, you know, not as satisfying. But it's a very similar thing in WoW. The zones are beautiful and they're there, but as soon as you've sort of got what you need from them, that's it. You go and you AFK in the main city until raid time, or until you jump into a dungeon. At least that's been my experience.
That's been the kind of way in 14 as well. Limsa is like a main hub for a lot of worlds. There is a couple places like Balmung, which is old at, obviously, for its own reasons. But outside of that, yeah, Limbs is like the popular spot for a lot of people to hang out in generally. So there's a lot more similarities with WoW than a lot of 14 players maybe would like to accept, probably, in that aspect.
Do you have a suggestion, or does the community at large have sort of a suggestion of what you think Final Fantasy could do better in that regard?
I always look at other MMOs in terms of ways to improve the current game. There isn't a lot in WoW I would actually take into 14 at the minute. I would actually say I kind of lean into the open world content a lot more. I feel like an MMO, especially as an old school MMOer, reasons to explore the world and do things in the world, and that sense of adventure I kind of was touching on earlier is kind of important for longevity of wanting to stay in the game and actually doing stuff in it. I look at Guild Wars 2 actually as a good example of this. They make sure that you utilize and there's reasons to go back and do things in those zones, be it through achievements or farming stuff in there, or just through exploration. For me personally, I would look at games like that and kind of be like, I kind of wish a lot of that was in 14, man, to be honest with you. That would be a really good thing to have. Not as mandatory content, but just something extra to do on top of what we currently already have.
We do have similar to that with WoW, with the achievement journal and stuff. But mostly people seem to do that more for internet points than because they actually want to do it. And even then, it's like so few and far between, rather than the community at large who are doing that. That you're barely gonna actually bump into someone, especially with like flying mounts and all this, and the zones being so big. And then on top of that, the whole sharding thing that Psy mentioned, like the way that I don't think anyone knows the exact science behind sharding in WoW, but it we have RP servers and then we have normal servers, and sharding doesn't exist on RP servers. So when you're on an RP server,
and why is that, Russ?
So you can recognize names.
Because it's immersion breaking to have sharding and phasing, and
yeah, and you'll recognize the same names, like oh, I know that person from there and there, and like you can always kind of go to the same spot and you'll meet the same people and stuff. It works very similar to how FF hubs generally tend to work. Like, for example, if you go Spriggan Marauders Guild at 3 p.m. on a weekday, I'm probably there with a bunch of people, right? It's like if word of that spread, then that would just be a thing. Like, we have random sprouts who are like, oh, who's getting married? Like, they come in every day and they're like, what's going on in here and stuff, right? But like, if that happened for years, people would probably just be like, oh yeah, that's where Russ does his stream intro, right? Like, at Spriggan on a weekday at this
time.
I
need a stream intro spot. Oh, that's nice.
Yeah. It's a nice little extra thing to do, right? And it'd be the same. Like, I almost am tempted to like move to an RP server on WoW just to like see people, because like you do see people, but they're like ghosts in WoW. Like they're like you can join a group and then you get phased into a new server, and then everyone around you just kind of despawns into thin air, and a different bunch of people phase in, and like no one really knows anyone. Like, people just have these stereotypes about different servers, which I'm sure you have in FF as well.
Yeah. Coming from Balmung originally, yes, I'm very used to the stereotypes, let me tell you.
Yeah, you wear that badge with honor. But yeah, like, I don't know, I just quite like that. And it always used to be like the servers were just in their own bubble on WoW, and then they introduced the whole cross server, which I do think is beneficial for the gameplay of the game. But again, like, it breaks the immersion and the kind of like ecosystems of the servers themselves and their little bubbles, which is quite nice to have.
It's a necessary evil in some ways, because I know when Endwalker released, they actually stopped letting people buy the game or do free trials because the servers were so overwhelmed with capacity, or at capacity.
Logging in during that time was insane. I remember I'm from Diablos. I remember trying to and Diablos isn't an overly populated world. I remember trying to log into that in December of 2021, and I remember.
And he's still waiting now. He's still waiting to get in now.
Well, I mean, if you see me stalling, you know why. That's all the practice, right? No, dude, you could sit for 4 or 5 hours on Japanese data center. I have friends who played in Japan, and they waited half a day, 18 hours up to that in the first 2 days just to try and get into the server, because the worlds were so populated. That's why they actually cut off people buying the game and cut off free trials, because they were just like, oh, we've got way too many people, we can't handle this here, we're gonna have to cut this bad boy off for a bit.
See, that's Blizzard. Oh yeah, go on, Russ.
I was just gonna say, did they implement some sort of like kick out for being AFK? Because right now that doesn't exist, right?
Yeah, they did. Yeah, there was like 30 minutes and you get kicked out. There was actually that was when one of the first things for me as a meme started coming up, because as you got
the disconnect man.
Yeah, I was the disconnect man. They were calling me. Oh look, we got Pontoed. He chats for too long and he gets kicked out of the game. Yeah, so that was a coined term because of me for a bit. Yeah, I remember that well.
Being Pontoed. That's like first time chatters in my stream going, oh yeah, being Pontoed.
Yeah, that's where a lot of people actually met me initially. It's like, oh, that's the guy that always gets disconnected 4 times a day.
Yeah, waiting 5 hours in queue just to DC because you're watching a Lucy Pie video or something, or a Pint video. I respect it. Yeah, that is sort of Blizzard's answer with some of the server technology and stuff. But it can be immersion breaking, but you can see the downsides of it and you can see the benefits of it or the upsides of it. But yeah, I want to ask you then as well, Ponto, as more of the realist in understanding where the game's at, what do you think are sort of the biggest successes and the biggest failures of 14 right now in current day?
I think the biggest success, and I know some people in the 14 bubble won't accept this here, I think the community is honestly one of the most healthy for an MMO. People are generally overall quite helpful, almost too helpful sometimes, where they just feel like, oh, I just want to help this person, I want to get them into stuff and doing stuff. I feel like the social aspect of 14 is probably one of the strongest for MMOs. Along with like the variety of types of content you can do, regardless of what type of player you are, there's something 14 can give you. Be it a raider, you can jump in and do the raiding and jump out. A casual player, there's lots of casual content to do and lots of varieties of content to do. Solo content, the deep dungeon people are there to do that.
Ocean fishers.
Fishing, there is people that will literally just do only fishing. Role players, there is that whole bubble of people. I have friends who stream on Twitch who are full-on DJs for roleplay nightclubs, run their own things as well with that. So it encompasses a lot of different things. So 14 in that way is great. Its biggest weakness currently for me would be, I feel like this expansion, the longevity of the content is the current biggest issue it has. A lot of stuff can be done fairly quickly, and you can be done with it fairly quickly as well. If you're a player who specifically targets one type of content, you can be in and out very quickly. But that's also like a design choice of the developers. They don't want you playing the game constantly.
Well, isn't that also like, if you're someone who only raids and then you finish the raid, the game's not in a bad state. It's just you aren't interested in what the other aspects of the MMO have to offer, because an MMO does need to cater to many different types of people. For example, if you look at World of Warcraft, you have a lot of people, a lot of streamers who are very Mythic Plus oriented, a lot of dungeon streamers, basically, FF players, and they'll be like, oh man, this like season of Mythic Plus sucks. I'm trying to do my 28 keys, my 29 keys, and like this is just sucks because this dungeon's overtuned. Gah, what the hell, Blizzard? It's like, do you know how many people, how many unique characters did a plus 25 last season? 900 people. 900 people. Like, why as a developer are you going to cater to like 900 people, right?
Yeah.
Whereas the amount of people that did a plus 20 is 300,000 people. And then if you think people that probably did just a plus 10 is probably a couple million, right? So as a developer, it's like, well, is this large section of people having a good time? Okay, then we've done our job in that area. Now we can focus on these other things. So sorry to like sort of jump there, Ponto, but I was just curious whether you guys consider that stuff as well, or like how that plays into it. Yeah,
I think that's why I was really kind of saying, like, if you're a one type of content sort of person, this is a game where you could jump into it and be done with it in a couple days, a couple weeks, whatever it be. That is a designer choice. They designed the game around taking breaks. They've outright said that themselves. For me personally, obviously, as we're content creators, so obviously our investment in the game is a little different than that of a general normal player. We want there to be more stuff to do for us, an all-encompassing thing to fill in the amount of time between patches. But at the same time, I also look at it from a player perspective. I do think this expansion could have done with a bit more, in that there's certain things missing this time around that they didn't do, that they did the last couple of times, and I think it's hurt the game in a couple of ways. But I have the belief that what we currently have, if they add on top of it more things, rather than just my biggest issue, I would say, is this: whenever they're adding anything new, for example, Criterion is basically their equivalent of what a mythic dungeon was going to be. It's a 4-man dungeon, it's high difficulty. They added this in Endwalker. There's a lot of complaints about it, be it from the reward perspective. My biggest thing about it is I'm glad they added it, but I don't like the idea of removing something to add something. If you're going to add something, everything else which is there already, if it's good content and there is engagement with that content, continue doing that content and add on top of it, which is something they didn't do this expansion, and it's probably my biggest grievance with them.
Have
but
costs increased or profits increased?
Their profits are the highest they've ever been. The interesting thing is, if you look at every expansion, in terms of how much content is given to you in 14, Stormblood, which had less money made than Shadowbringers and Endwalker, was actually the time it got the most content, because it had the Deep Dungeon, it had Eureka, it had the Deep Dungeon, Eureka, had your standard stuff that's already there, the Alliance raids, normal raids. Blue Mage initially came in around that time. So there was a lot of stuff that came in around that time. And yeah, that's my biggest complaint, I would say. Hopefully they kind of smash that out with Dawn Trail, because they have made the promise that this will be the expansion with the most content that they do. So we'll see.
Yeah, I think I heard Zeno say it quite well recently. Like, he said, like, you're not burned out of the game, you're just bored. Because like,
I agree with that.
Yeah, you're just like we have the same thing in WoW again. Like, it's like a subsection of players who race to get everything done in the shortest amount of time possible, and they just gobble all this content as quickly as they can.
Well, that's on the internet forever there, Russ.
Gobble. I'll do it a second
What
time.
you gobbling, bud?
Yeah, they gobble through everything as quickly as they possibly can, and then they just sit there with their fucking church bells, and they're like, the game is boring, there's nothing to do, like, I've run out of content, like, develop for me. It's like,
yeah,
develop things quickly so I have things to play. It's like, the devs aren't gonna get one guide, you know, like, we as streamers occasionally fall victim to getting one guide, but the devs are not gonna get one guide because they have, like, proper stats backing everything up as deep as they go, right? And like Sai said, it's like, they're not gonna develop stuff for this very minute group of people, which is again like another gripe I kind of have with the whole like race to world first scene in WoW. Like, everyone's like trying to, you know, there's maybe like 200 people in that race, 200 people in the entire like world.
Technically there's like 40 if you're like, in terms of the community, as far as the community see it, they see 2 guilds and they only recognize 2 guilds as racing. In which case you're holding off class tuning, spec tuning. You can't even get access to the new legendary weapon until the raid has been cleared on Mythic for the first time. So they're literally gating all, because it would be unfair for some guilds if some of them got legendaries and the others didn't. So they're literally gating this content behind the race. Yeah, it is interesting, isn't it?
Yeah. So I just think it's like, and people are like, oh my god, I can't believe, like, you see all these tweets from like you know, unhappy Race to World First raiders who are like, oh, the tuning's so bad, I can't believe they nerfed this, like, the raid's so easy, we prepped for this for 6 months by playing 16 hours a day straight for 6 months. It's like,
that sounds healthy.
That sounds like it's a you problem, bro. Like, that's not a problem with the game, that's a problem with like your addiction to the game or the way that you play the game. Like, even if it's not an addiction, if it's like a job or whatever, like, let's say that's their job, like, okay, but like, we're not gonna, you know, the other millions of people who play the game for fun aren't gonna play it, you know, appreciate having to play it like a job, because that's how you personally prefer it and would rather it be developed, right?
I think a big thing that a lot of people lack, especially in sort of the streamer space or like wherever it is, it's a lack of, I think, empathy to others' situations.
Yeah.
And it's exactly that, right? It's like you were saying, Russ, make this game for me. And it's like, well, there's plenty of people out there that aren't you and they don't have your same ambitions. And it's a question of if the wider community is satisfied with what is being given to them. Because, like you say, if you're doing a race sword first and you're prepping for 6 months in advance, of course you're going to walk through that raid because no one else is prepping like you. So you should walk through that raid. But, like, does that mean it's a bad raid or something? No, it just means that you sort of overcommitted, right? For sure. I did want to ask then, Ponto, is there any, like, how is the race toward first scene in Final Fantasy? How's that space being built up?
Honestly, it's so Blizzard kind of nurtures it in World of Warcraft, whereas with Square Enix, they congratulate people whenever they're able to do world first and stuff over here, but it's not really done in the same way. You obviously know Frosty, aka Mog Talk. He's
Mhm.
probably the only one who, and you know, he's trying to build it up as much as he can here, but obviously without any sort of official backing from Square Enix, it's hard for them to legitimize the race to world first within 14 in any sort of way because of many factors. I mean, it's also another thing where like the design of raids and the use of third-party programs in 14, they're not allowed, whereas they are allowed in WoW.
But no one in Final Fantasy uses add-ons or third-party tools, right, Ponto? Because that's what I've been
Of course
told.
not. Absolutely not. This is a good, wholesome video game. There would be no such things used like that. And
What's a log?
What's the log? Guys, what's the moon? There's what's the moon, guys? I'm sure you've seen that in a lot of people's adventure play. It's holy shit. I know I have anyway. But like, the thing is, until there's some form of legitimacy to taken towards world first from the company itself, it's hard. And people have said this, especially during Endwalker. Anytime someone clears the raid first, it's like, oh, they cleared it, but what did they use to clear it? So it's hard to legitimize any sort of race to world first stuff, be it ultimates or savages. In 14, it's like, oh, are they using that program? Have they used that program? Is there any real legitimate people actually clearing it first that haven't some sort of external factors helping them? So it's that's kind of the thing about that.
Because they don't like, because obviously they'll get banned if they record their screen or whatever, right?
I mean,
they can't even say like, look, we only use this because then they'll get banned anyway.
I'll give an example. So you've heard of Top, obviously, just from people passively talking about it. During the prog of Top, there was a group that cleared it first.
Oh, I think I know this.
It was a Japanese group, and they used third-party things, but they never talked about it openly. But they had, you know, in certain raid groups, you have a 9th man or a 10th man, etc. There was someone within that bubble, within that Japanese group, who released videos of their prog from YouTube that showed their use of third-party programs, and the Japanese community was so heavily like negging on them on Twitter that a bunch of the people who had accounts who were involved in that ended up being forced to actually delete their characters because it was shame. Yeah, they actually just deleted their characters.
That is a very traditional Japanese style, though, isn't it? You know, there is shame that you have brought onto your family. Some might even say you have dishonored your family. Yeah, what do you think about then in terms of legitimacy? Because I don't think Square Enix can support a race until they can be 100% certain that people aren't using third-party tools. Or, on the other side of the coin, Square Enix accepts that people are using third-party tools and they just go, it is what it is. But that would open up a whole can of worms in its own right, surely.
Yep, that's the problem with it. I feel that it's if they do or if they don't, they're kind of buggered either way with it. So which is probably why they don't really have a position on it, because they really know that by even placing a position on it, it's going to cause some form of headache anyway. So rather than get involved in it, just leave it as it is. So that for me will kind of always make it kind of difficult to kind of legitimize the whole race to world first. I think that what Frosty and Mog Talk does over there, though, because the way they do things is the money goes towards charities and support like that there. I love that. I fully support that. I think that's great that they're even doing something like that. It's also great that any sort of community-based stuff is rising up to try and incentivize people to go out and do it in any sort of way anyway. But on a official front, I can never see Square Enix probably doing anything with it, unfortunately.
Yeah.
We actually have pretty similar circumstances in WoW. Although Blizzard play into it a little bit more these days. It used to be kind of like how you described Ponto, where they'd acknowledge it. They'd probably tweet and be like, "Congrats, Echo Guild," or like, "Congrats."
They financially supported a little bit. Have you not seen Warcraft Rumble being sponsored on the major streams? Yeah. So Blizzard is funding it to some degree, but not necessarily equally. Like, I don't think necessarily every single team is getting a fair scoop.
No.
Yeah.
They want eyes on their game, like it's a business transaction for them. They're like, oh, there's a ton of eyeballs, the same as any other sponsor. Like most of the sponsors on those streams are like peripherals or PC kind of hardware companies like HyperX and stuff like that. So they obviously just saw like, well, that's a lot of eyeballs, that's a lot of impressions. Let's get in this case Warcraft Rumble, which is their new mobile game. They're like, let's just push that in front of as many people. We know that they're Warcraft fans who are watching this, so it's literally the perfect advertising, really. Whereas before, like think back a few years or a couple expansions ago, I think it might have even been Preach like asking Ian about this, which was the lead developer for Retail WoW, about like their involvement in the world first race or lack thereof, and he was like, yeah, we just kind of want to leave people to kind of get on with it, and we don't, because they don't want the potential like public backlash if they do let themselves get more involved and things like that. So this whole like Warcraft Rumble thing that they've jumped into now with the advertising, they like they put up PvP prize pools and stuff like this, but they never do anything for like race to world first. So they've always been very involved in the PvP side of the game, putting up tournaments and like having their proper broadcast for that and stuff, but they've never had like an official Blizzard broadcast for anything PvE related. Actually, the dungeons they do for the MDI now, but they've never done it for raiding. Like they just stay out of raiding for whatever reason. I'm not really sure why. It's probably because of the whole drama with the regional release and stuff like that.
Yeah,
So,
until they have global release, they can't exactly run a race if they don't have global release.
No.
Yeah, and if there's just oh yeah, no, go on.
But yeah, like they also don't, like, the players don't want Blizzard involved as well, because they think it'll kind of like tarnish the, like it will upset the like how the race works and stuff as well. So they don't want interference in that way. And like you said, with the whole can of worms with the add-ons and third-party programs and stuff, it's kind of like the whole is what it is thing is kind of the situation we're in currently with WoW. It's like the can, like Pandora's box is thoroughly opened in that case, and people, like I've mentioned it a few times, like there's an arms race now with like add-on developers and devs because they're like allowed. Blizzard can break add-ons they really don't like, or particular weak auras being the worst defender always in every single race. And like these world first teams, they have like analysts, they have the players, they have the organizers, they have the production teams, they have analysts which like analyze everyone's like logs pull by pull, they have coders for like creating weak auras, and like anything kind of goes. And we've had some like really powerful weak auras be created over the years, which just completely negate, you know, Blizzard trying to make these mechanics new and fresh and quite hard to deal with, things that we haven't seen before. And then someone will just come along and, you know, be a really fancy coder, and they'll find a way to just like, oh, you click this button and like the mechanic's done for you, or it's gone. Example of that being is it called Sepulchre, the one with the jailer, the Lords of Dread. There was like this Among Us mechanic basically, where you had to like split up and stand still, and the bosses would disappear, and like there's 20 people in the raid, and you know 5 people could see who the imposters were, and you had to like type in chat and like work out who had
who was like consistently a naughty boy,
who was consistently like had the bosses like standing behind them. That meant that they were the imposters. So you had to like cross-reference between all the players in the raid and actually communicate. That was the intended mechanic. And then people just made this weak aura where like it would just look deep into the code, and then it would just be like, just everyone click this button at the same time, and then it will tell you the answer. And then like Blizzard were like, well, fuck off with that, because we made this mechanic specifically to, you know, introduce like a cooperation mechanic into the game, right? We've had similar things like that with Mecha Talk in the past and things like that, where it's like colors and shapes, and every time they try and do one of these, someone just finds a way to outsmart it, which means that the devs either like break the weak aura, or they're like, oh well, we got outsmarted, I guess we'll just try and make we'll double down and try and make an even harder version next time. And then it just like makes this thing where like the devs are trying to outsmart the players, and the players are trying to outsmart the devs, and for the average player, it's just bad news, right? Because the average player doesn't have access to these weak auras, and they're just having to deal, like, because of like the select group, this select small group of players, you know, trying to outsmart the devs and race with them. Now everyone else gets punished because they're having to deal with these like ridiculous mechanics all the time, and some people don't have weak auras, which means that the boss is essentially unplayable for them at that point, because everyone, like, let's say 90% of your team uses the weak aura, the 10% that don't, it's much easier for the organizers just kick those people out and get people that have the weak auras than it is to teach people, or like either get the 90% to do it the normal way, the intended way, or get the 10% to install the weak auras and explain how it works. It's easy to just like cut out the smaller guy and bring in, like, buff the numbers back up with people that already know how it works. So there's people like, you're punished now for not having add-ons, right? So it's a really kind of bad, toxic situation.
Yeah,
I mean, that's exactly why the third-party programs aren't allowed in 14.
Yeah.
If they kind of similar to what you're saying there, they would have to keep layering mechanic on top of mechanic on top of mechanic, and then you have this necessity basically to have these programs to even be able to complete some of the higher parts of the raids. That's why if you ever go into like a World of Warcraft stream, I know I personally have, all you ever hear is that ping, ping, ping. You know, the noise of
move left, move right,
and all that stuff.
It turns your brain to mush. Like,
that's
it's actually
exactly
annoying to listen to. I hate streams when I go in and it's like that ping, ping sound. You just don't want to watch it.
That one as well.
Yeah, like, nah, fuck all that, dude.
You
I
have
ain't
that
watching that. No, I played it as a joke one time. I'll try and show people like me playing with this weak aura package that I did as a joke, and it lights up your whole screen with just a bunch of shit, like as a joke. But it just shows the exaggerated effect of the impact of these things. But even WoW players are getting annoyed with the amount of add-ons and weak auras. That like one of the worst offenders in WoW was in Sepulchre, one of the more recent raids in the last couple years. And there was a boss council. It was like a council boss. It was like 4 bosses that you fight.
That was the worst.
I remember killing the boss, right? So you kill like the 3rd or 4th boss, and you come to this new boss. It's like the 5th boss, right? And it's a sick fight. And you get to the boss, and remember, you're progging maybe 3 nights a week, 3 hours a night, right? So time is precious, and you're trying to prog. You get to this boss, and you're like, right, we got an hour left to prog. We got 2 hours left to prog tonight, man. We can really make some headway under this boss. Maybe we can even kill it tonight if we're really slick. You get to the boss, and then everyone has to stop. Your officers put a 10-minute break timer on as they try and get everyone accustomed to the weak. Like, all right, everyone, install this weak aura pack. You install this weak aura pack. It takes 3 minutes just to install it. Then everyone has to sort of position everything where it needs to go and everything. And we have to work through the weak aura to understand the fight rather than even looking at what the fight is. And it's stuff like that. Yeah, we've not even pulled the... I remember specifically, we didn't pull the boss for an hour.
Same. That one was like...
That's ridiculous.
Really, really bad. And it's like, it's because people become so reliant on these weak auras and stuff like that. Particular one, I remember, had like 2 separate kick rotations, which were like, there was 2 different bosses with kicks at the same time, and when they were by themselves, it was not so bad. But then you'd fight all the bosses together, so you had to have like 4 people kicking one boss and 4 people kicking another. So they would pop up a little marker above their head because of this weak aura. And it would say like 1, 2, 3, 4. Every time they did a cast that either completed or got interrupted, the number above the head would go up. So you'd be like, okay, I'm kick number 1 in the rotation. It goes 1, 2, 3, 4 resets. 1, 2, 3, 4 resets. And I remember in my guild, there was like one guy like didn't like toggle a box or something on his weak. Like we have to like install the weak aura, explain how it works, set out the kick like rotations, tell everyone who they're on, when they're kicking. If someone's away for one particular prog night, then that disrupts the whole flow because then you gotta get stand-in or like the like order shifts.
You need this one to fill free, man.
Sorry?
You need someone to fill 3 in, you need someone to fill 4 in.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. We need a fill on left side 3, for example, and then like that interrupts the whole thing, and then someone's like weak aura's out of date by then and stuff like this. And we had this one guy who like he'd like forgot to tick a box or he'd unticked it or something when we were setting up the weak aura. And I remember, so it took us like an hour to set up the weak auras, and then like an hour into progress, this guy's like, we kept being like, who's missing their kick on this boss, right? And then this guy's like, guys, am I kick 62? He's like, I can't, like, he was like kick number 3 on like boss number 1, right? But his thing hasn't been resetting after 4 every time. So we're like 7 minutes into the fight. And this guy's just like, I can't remember if this is my kick or not, but I think I might have missed my kick if
this guy's actually just counting in his head, like, every pull.
Like, he
was
like dividing
time.
by 4 every time, like. And he wasn't the smartest guy as well, bless him.
Clearly.
But it was just so funny. Yeah.
I want to then ask you, Ponto. I sometimes feel, so WoW is twice the age of Final Fantasy. Now we're getting into the numbers, chat. Okay, follow along. Okay, so WoW is twice as old as Final Fantasy. WoW's been around the block. It's had a lot of development, a lot of things like. A lot of new things have been introduced, and I guess some sort of innovations have occurred in WoW. We've had things like Mythic Plus added to the game, which is scaling dungeons infinitely. Final Fantasy is only just getting their sort of 4-player content, which is Criterion's, only just coming into the fold. It's in its infancy, right? There's a lot of things that WoW has already done per se, or their version of it, and Final Fantasy... Do you feel like WoW's got its full-fledged race to world first and everything like that? Final Fantasy is sort of developing it. WoW's plagued with add-ons. Final Fantasy sort of has them, people use them, but it's not really encouraged or spoken about, yada yada. There's a lot of parallels that I see with WoW and Final Fantasy, but it just feels like Final Fantasy and its community are sort of still catching up to WoW, but not necessarily in a good way. Do you feel like Final Fantasy could be on course to follow some of the downfalls of WoW, or do you feel like the community is different and the development of the game is different enough to sort of lead its own course?
I think it leads its own course in its own way. I did think that Endwalker has been weaker than the last 2 expansions before it. Been very vocal about that for anyone who's watched my stream, probably. I think overall, as long as they keep giving us what is currently being given, plus a bit more, I think there needs to be a little bit more on top of it. This is a game that is designed in a very different way than WoW. In WoW, people are afraid of taking long breaks from that game because there's that fear of FOMO, of missing out. You're almost inclined that in World of Warcraft, you have to be on for weeklies and dailies because there's always a form of grind that you have to do in that game. And there's grinds to do in 14, obviously, too. But it's been set up in such a different way that it's been catered around the idea of taking breaks. The developers have said that themselves. I'm happy with where the game is in its current stance. I would like there to be some changes in terms of how they're doing certain types of combat from Endwalker. I would like some changes to that. I would like there to be more Eureka/Bosha style content, which is something we lacked in Endwalker. As long as they keep what they have at the minute, plus that, plus maybe looking at open world content, I would be fully content with what they currently have. I don't play 14 for a World of Warcraft experience. If I wanted that, I'd play World of Warcraft. It's my way of looking at it, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
so
yeah.
I'm happy with what it has, just a little bit more. That's all I'm asking, just a little bit more.
Okay. Do you think that is a content creator issue? Do you think the average player is feeling that?
I think the average player, if you're a person that doesn't take this as a content creator, you're a person who's going to play the game until you're burnt out, or I guess not burnt out, bored is really the right word.
You finish things, yeah.
You basically just go play a different game. Like, as a content creator, you need to learn to diversify in terms of what you do. I am a mostly only 14 streamer, but I also still have things left to do. I spend a lot of time chatting and hanging out with people, helping other people out. Very new player friendly in my bubble, but I also like to try and touch on higher end things as well. There will be a point. I think Zapla is a perfect example of this. She was a person who came in as a casual player. Then she would get into the mid-core content. Then she was clearing, savages, and then she's cleared a couple of ultimates. And now she, at this point, is now dabbling in other games like Genshin and Warcraft again, etc. I think that is the general route a lot of content creators go in 14.
Yeah, isn't she a Genshin Impact streamer?
She does love her Genshin, man. She does love her Genshin.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, it's nice boobs in those games. You know what I mean, man? Anyway.
Yeah, perfect for you.
There you go.
I know, right? Perfect. But like, I do think that that's a healthy route of going around playing, you know, those sort of games or playing 14 in general. I don't want it to become like WoW, where I have to feel like I have to be on.
Yeah.
I try and always look at it from a player perspective rather than just a content creator perspective.
Yeah.
I can speak firsthand on that. Like, stopping WoW, I mean, I know Psy still plays it here and there, and you said you were streaming it 1 day a week. I know, guys.
Dude, I played Final Fantasy yesterday. I played WoW yesterday. Bear in mind, I played Final Fantasy Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. I played WoW yesterday. I had someone come into chat and say, "When are you returning to Final Fantasy?" It was like,
oh,
I was like,
there you go.
There's that. Let's see. Whenever I was talking about the community, there is that side of the community.
Yeah.
Where it's just like,
I think
it's
that's
the
every
thing with
game.
MMOs,
Yeah.
especially, are bad.
Yeah.
It's tribalism. It's like,
Yeah.
you're not playing my game. That's
Yeah.
my game. You're playing something else.
You
Oh
quit,
my
right?
God.
Yeah.
No, but sorry, go on,
I'm
go on, Russ.
Yeah, I was just gonna say like how freeing it's felt not feeling obliged to log in. I don't play like I barely play or log in FF off stream. Like the only times I've really done it is I need to like take a thumbnail or something, or Ponto's in the EU Gridania Adventurers Guild, and I pop on and make a sussy plate or something. I thought about that. I have never actually done that.
Oh yeah, never done that. No.
Never done that. No.
No.
But like that's the extent of my offline play, because I guess it's partly to do with like the fact that if I did anything off stream, people would miss it, and people want to.
Yeah, it's not that you don't want to play
my-
the game. You just don't want people
Yeah.
to miss what you do.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But it has felt really nice, not feeling like I'm falling behind. Whereas in WoW, you know, especially if you miss like the start of a season or like the first 2 days of a season release on WoW, like it almost feels like, what's the point playing? Like I was like seeing, you know, I was like kind of lurking in my old guild Discord and like sometimes popping in a channel with them, asking how the raid's been, asking how the season's going and stuff. And they're like, when are you gonna play? You're gonna play some like casual M+ with us? And I'm like, I feel like I've kind of missed the boat. Like it's only 1 week and like 2 days into the season at this point, and I already feel like people have kind of like, they got the gear and now they're raid logging. Like they're racing to that point where they can just raid log. And if you don't play it within those 10 days, it like you've kind of
no one's
missed out,
around
and
to help.
no one's around. No one wants to take like a fresh character into their runs, because it's just gonna make it harder. Why would they take you when they can, like, there's no such thing as like helping each other. It's like, they take you when they can take, you know, someone with gear and stuff, and or spend that same time pushing a key when instead of like farming gear in a key or something. Like there's exceptions obviously, but yeah, you definitely feel like you kind of miss out. And the same with the whole like reputation grind that came with this patch. Like if I went back, I wouldn't have to do that, because I think there's like catch up in the game.
Yeah.
So like you just get all the reputation from doing the story, whereas like at the start people were like flying around for 18 hours a day picking up seeds. So there's like,
For anyone who doesn't play WoW, by the way, the terminology must just be pretty bonkers. We're like, oh, these people seed farming. What's going on there? Yeah, I agree. Ponto, do you find that, because that's something that definitely happens, like in WoW, you can have people who are maybe lower achievement than you, like they don't have as much, they're not pushed as high in some of the content as you, and then they're like, you'll play with them, right? You'll play with them because you're just a good bud and you just like them and you'll help them out, whatever. But then maybe like the next season, they'll get a little bit more score than you. And suddenly it's like, who megalol? It's like they don't want to know you. Like they're like, sorry bro, you can't provide anything for me. You ain't getting invited to my content because like I don't know if you're gonna be good enough. And it's like, bro, I literally helped you like a couple weeks ago getting into it.
With you.
Yeah, like I used to
I
push
can
with
play
you,
the
like
game.
yeah. And sometimes it's even within the same season. Like after a couple weeks, like you can be 100 or 200 points above someone, and then a couple weeks later they can be like 50 points above you, and it's like, who? Like, sorry, I don't know if we can bring you, bro. Like, I don't know if you're gonna be good enough for this one, and they'll just ghost you. And it's really, it feels sort of like everyone's like not everyone, but it feels like some people can sort of be fake. And sometimes I worry that like with WoW players that they're not necessarily looking for, like WoW streamers, they're not necessarily looking for what is the best content. They're looking at just what serves them the best. Like,
Right.
Yeah. It's very.
is
like,
that
it's a very selfish player base.
Yeah, and it's like the thing is it's damaging long term for themselves, right? Because people are just all about pushing like the highest IO, the highest score, but they're not about like making the most interesting or entertaining content. Which is where Russ, like when you say, oh, a bunch of Final Fantasy players coming over and us going through Heroic and doing some Mythic Plus and stuff like that together, I think that would be really cool. In fact, I even have something planned with Zeppla. I messaged her yesterday angrily and said, when are you playing WoW with me? Because we spoke at FanFest and she was like, oh, we should do some content. Yeah, for sure. Because I think that would be so fun. And I think that that's something where people don't always consider, like, where can we just have fun here? Where can we just make good entertainment stuff rather than just, I need more internet points for the sake of it? Is there sort of like a... Do you feel like there's some good, genuine people in the Final Fantasy, like, streaming community and the high-end community? Do you feel like there's some good souls there? Is it plagued with any sort of Humegalols and stuff like that?
I mean, for my personal experience of being on Twitch, I've kind of interacted with a large majority of some of the higher end guys in the 14 category. I've never really had any sort of negative sort of interactions with them. I've raided with them passively, you know, off stream, on stream, at some random point in time, almost the majority of them. There's never really been any sort of like underlying motives. Like, it just feels like they're just doing it for the sake of doing it, or they're just doing it for fun. Like, it's just, I've never really thought of it in that way. I only ever jump into content because it's going to be fun content for stream, or it's going to be beneficial to help other people out. I've never really thought about it in a, you benefit directly from it. Like, for example, gear in 14 it's so unnecessary to get it right away that I personally don't care about it until it eventually comes around to me. Like, it's like, oh, I could get my best in slot weapon and I could get my best in slot body and this and that, but it doesn't matter really when you get it. You can clear most of the content with crafted gear the week the content comes out, and it's the hardest stuff that'll come out at that point. The only time you really ever need to farm for gear in advance to fully prep for something is ultimates. You have to have cleared the current Savage tier and gotten the best in slots and the builds that you need for it. But you, like, outside of that there, you don't really feel that you need to worry about something like that. Now, I've never done week 1 ultimates. I don't think I ever would, because it's another level above where I currently kind of am wanting to do content in this game.
Sure.
I want to kind of just have fun with it. I'm not really competitive in that way. Like, I'm competitive with myself. I'm competitive with people who I play with that I want us to do better, but I don't really ever want to do that chase. And I think a big part of that is it's kind of what I kind of alluded to earlier. There's no real payoff for doing that, so I don't really see the point in it, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like there's no race to world first officially, so it's kind of like I don't really see the point in chasing for it. To be able to say I was able to figure out the mechanic first, I guess, you know.
Yeah, you don't get like an ego boost from clearing early. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, cool. I'm fairly the same. Like, for me, when it comes to WoW, it's like I don't care about gear. The gear is more of like a means to make the fight easier. But if like you said, you don't really need the gear in FF, then there's no rush. And you only want to clear the fight as early as possible when it comes to WoW, so you have to re-clear it less times. like so you can drop your raiding hours your weekly amount of allotted raiding hours down as quickly as you can, so it's less like despair each week, basically.
Yeah.
Like, the more I think about WoW raiding, the more I find it like the process of like mythic raiding and stuff like that like unenjoyable. But I do think like what Sai said a minute ago about making content as a streamer is like kind of the way to go. Like,
yeah,
obviously everyone gets the kicks in different ways, so people who aren't streamers obviously raid mythic, and en masse is the very vast majority of people. They don't do it for the internet points or anything like that. They do it because they enjoy it, and that's fine. Just I think maybe it's like I'm just burned out of it or
I think you're a bit
again,
burnt.
like,
Burnout.
Yeah.
I would say burnout, honestly.
yeah,
Because
maybe.
looking at it from the outsider perspective, I want to try it at some point just for the sake of trying it. I have no competitive mindset towards it though.
Yeah.
I want to go in.
Holy shit!
with...
We just recruited Ponto for
No,
our rating team.
At FanFest, dude. I've been considering it since FanFest because it's not just yourself. Gingy was poking about it. A few other lads were poking about it. For me personally, though, I don't have the competitive sort of spirit to jump in and be sweaty about it. I want to go in and just like anything, I just want to go in with a couple of buddies, have some fun with it, fuck around, look at it as a fun bit of content to do with friends or content creators. That's the way I just kind of look at it.
Yeah, I think that's how it'd be best done, especially like the whole FF Creator collab thing. That would be the best way to do that kind of thing. Yeah, I mean, mythic rating is it's almost like a different kettle of fish in terms when you compare it to heroic. Like they're the same bosses, same fights, different, slightly harder versions and stuff. But the whole it being a static 20-person roster adds this like entirely other element where it brings in all these different expectations. Most of the time, where you got to be prepared a certain way because people don't want their time wasted if they're dedicating it. You raid on a schedule. Whereas like heroic, you can kind of just pick up and play. You don't need the best gear ever. It's not going to take you months and months and months. It's much more of, kind of how you mentioned, just like going in with a couple buds and whoever kind of turns up on the day. As long as you have at least 10 people, you can play. You got to have like between 10 and 25, I think. No, between 10 and 30 is what you need. 30, yeah. Between 10 and 30 people, so it doesn't matter if you have 17, whereas in Mythic you straight up can't play. So you can bring a friend of a friend to your normal buddies, be like, oh yeah, this person was interested in playing this week, cool, you can just chuck them in. Or like, oh, this person can't make it, okay, that's fine, like we'll adapt kind of thing, which is
Adjust. Healers adjust.
Yeah, and I think it would be nice if there were more options to do harder content than that in WoW, but the reason they have the whole 20-person is so they can tamper with the fights to make them difficult in that sense. So yeah, there's a double-edged sword in a way.
Yeah. I'm wondering then as well, Ponto. So, actually, I did have a question, but I've forgotten it now. But yeah, we were leading as well into things like global release and no beta testing, no PTR. I feel like that's a little bit of a conversation that we can explore a bit more as well. Like, how do you feel about the lack of PTR, the fact that all the content comes through fresh? Is that as... Like, there's no data mining, and at FanFest, as we just saw, like, they said, hey, here's Viper, but there was no demo for anyone there at FanFest to test it out, right? As far as I'm aware. So you didn't get to try it out, you didn't get to see the abilities, rotations, or anything like that. What do you think about how closely guarded a lot of this content is? And then actually, I think we should jump into a little bit of a discussion about combat in general to, like, sort of finish things up, because that's something we haven't really touched on. But I think combat in this game is super mega interesting, and it would be cool to talk about. But yeah, what is the community happy with that? The fact that everything's blind?
I think it's for the best for the game that it's blind, honestly, because the problem with letting people get their hands on it early is they nitpick, they pull at things. They do media tour events before the game's next expansion drops, and during those events, they'll bring people in to try the classes out in their upcoming state. So, for example, with Endwalker, they brought a bunch of guys in. I think the guys they brought in for Endwalker, they made some mistakes with a couple of the people they brought in that they brought in guys that were from, this was during the time where World of Warcraft people were coming into 14. A lot of the guys they brought along, some of them never even got to the max level. So the feedback they could give in regards to how the jobs were playing, some of it was probably not feedback that was really that useful in comparison to bringing people in. Like, okay, for example, like Xenos wasn't invited to the Endwalker one, and he obviously would be a tank main. I think they did okay with tanks actually in Endwalker. It's one of the ones they did kind of okay with for the most part. There's a couple of things I would change, but having experienced heads that you're going to bring in for media tour events like that to try out the classes is very important. If you don't bring those sort of people in, then when the job gets released, that's when people will start critiquing it. But if they give like access to the general overall player base to critique certain classes, then you would get a lot of bad feedback, because some people, look, as much as we all have opinions are a little bit like assholes. Sometimes everyone has one, but sometimes you don't need to see all of them. Some of them are pretty fucking bad looking, you know what I mean? So
how many assholes have you looked at, Ponto?
Oh,
do you
man,
have a
have
number?
you ever seen one of my streams?
Those things blow.
Yeah, when you guys are talking about adventure plates, I'm assuming that you go and dive in deep then, I suppose.
No comment. I'm a wholesome mediator, hopeful streamer, my friend. I don't have a clue what you're talking about.
Yeah.
But no, in terms of the overall classes, I think it's better that people who have a lot more years of experience of playing the game get their hands on it. I'm hoping that for the next mediator event that they put their hands into, they bring more people in that have experience, a lot more experience with the game than what happened last
So
time.
you don't think they should bring me and Russ to the media tour?
I think if you guys can get the level 90 by the time the mediator invites are coming out, go ahead.
Why? You can't rush us, man. You can't rush us.
I'm not rushing you guys.
2029.
Yeah, let's go.
Let's go.
Yeah.
But, I think it'll be interesting. I'm wondering how they're going to change it this time around, Slam, to be honest with you. It's kind of a... I know for a couple of content creators are wondering about that for next year too, because there is kind of what we're leaning into, discussions about the current combat system that some of us would like to see changed in regards to how Endwalker's combat kind of plays out.
Yeah. Well, I by the way, chat and everyone watching, I think are you guys cool? We probably do this last little bit and then maybe a couple quick Q&As and then we call it there. Is that good?
Yeah, sounds good.
Yeah. I know Ponto's probably got to get back to sleep, get a little evening nap in. So, chat, if you want to start thinking of some questions and stuff for Q&A, and we can smash through those, people in the audience and stuff as well. But I just today actually put out a YouTube video on netcode in Final Fantasy, and something that you become very aware of when you start Final Fantasy is the slow global cooldown and slow combat in general, but also things like snapshotting and just the way in which you actually, like, the combat is opposite to WoW, whereas in Final Fantasy you can stand in the animation but dodge the telegraphing. In WoW it's the opposite. You can stand in the telegraphing but you need to dodge the animation. What do you think about... So yeah, I mean, I'm referencing the netcode because I just yesterday or Wednesday literally learned about how it actually sort of works and how it's changed over the time and stuff. But I think that has shaped the combat of Final Fantasy. What do you think about the combat? I think classes as well can sometimes feel very samey in terms of there's not much RNG for most of them. There's normally like 2 or 3 different rotations with a big finisher or something like that. Are people generally happy about combat and combat design, class design in Final Fantasy?
So, feedback I've gotten, so I can't talk about Stormblood because obviously I wasn't there for it. I can talk about Shadowbringers and Endwalker and my experiences of Realm Reborn. The combat has definitely evolved quite a lot, to be honest with you, over the years. Now, talking netcode quickly before I jump into that, it's one of those things you kind of get used to be honest with you.
Yeah.
Like, it's just one of those things that even if you played World of Warcraft, that most guys who came over from that, they just eventually just quickly adjust to it. It's like, okay, initially that 2.5 GCD feels like a year apart every single time, but then buttons, you have more OGCD, so you're waving and stuff like that. So it becomes, that's kind of whatever. I don't really worry about that too much. In terms of the way classes are playing at the minute, the word, and you've heard it from many people, the word homogenization is heavily used. It's true. It's true. It's something I noticed a little bit in Shadowbringers, but in Endwalker, it's definitely a very, very big thing, especially because at the start of Endwalker, one of the things they did was they went and looked at a bunch of the toolkits of all the classes, and they reallocated different timers to certain ones. And the reason they did that was to base the idea of doing buffs and bursts around what we call the 2-minute window. And that there is where the 2-minute meta discussions kind of comes up now in 14. A lot of people will talk about how it's kind of making the game feel a lot more dull and boring and stuff like that. I mean, it comes in two different ways. When all the classes in 14 are built similarly, it's a lot easier to kind of balance classes because it's a lot easier. Tanks, for example, a lot of the tanks are very CME outside of a couple things, but they all have a similar sort of like flow and routine to them. Outside of Gunbreaker, a little bit, but not that much, really. But with that, it's easier for them to look at numbers and change potencies and balance things very evenly. They have missed the boat with that. They're on a couple classes. Black Mage and the Caster class bubble is the biggest one I can think of. Black Mage is so overpowered compared to the other two, but anyway, to that. The overall flow of classes, playing them at the minute, in my opinion, because a raid, the most current raid tiers are based around this 2-minute meta, it's fine when you first go into it, but I think over time people will become more bored more quickly with it because it's very samey. You know, 14 itself, the battle content itself, the raids are a dance. You know, everything has the same sort of flow with a couple of little, you know, changes in there, but for the most part it's the same sort of flow. Learn the dance, learn the flow. So it becomes a little monotonous if things fall into that way with the 2-minute window. It's like, okay, we're at this point of the fight, this is where I burst, this is where I use my pot, everything should be realigned all at this one point. It's very organized, you know. I guess it feels good for some if it's done exactly that way. I, as a person who plays the A Realm Reborn and even a little bit of Shadowbringers, where buff timers aligned themselves at different periods, it felt nicer not to have to worry so much about that meta and kind of learn to optimize yourself or think about optimizing yourself differently. Like nowadays, you don't have to really think as much. I think that's a biggest problem. You don't really have to use your brain at all. It becomes a little monotonous. It's very good for like new raiders and new players getting into the game at this point because you can come in and it's very easy to pick anything up and learn it. And if you ever decide to swap to something else, because they're so similar, you know, it's easy enough for to pick up. And as long as you know to press your bloody buttons, you're probably going to be okay at it. But I think that would be my biggest issue kind of with the combat system in a minute. It's too repetitive. I also am not a big fan of fights with large amounts of downtime, and this expansion's had quite a lot of that. I'm not really a big fan of it. Puzzle bosses are fun to prog, but once you're done with the puzzle, it's just there was a video that came out recently. It was very toxic video. There's one part to it which is kind of true. He talks about raiding in it.
We know it's a guy. Okay.
People in chat will know this here. This quote. Mechanics in 14 is stand somewhere and resolve. That's very much it. And for a lot of puzzle fights, it's very much that. It is a little bit like once you know the thing, it's a little dull. Yeah, it's a little bit dull in that way, in my opinion. This is just my opinion, obviously. But yeah, that would be my biggest criticism. I feel like the earlier fights, one of the reasons why a lot of people like going back and doing them is because the flow of the fights feel different than what they do now. That some of the flow of the current fights are just not as good. I'll give an example. Most people who have played through all of Endwalker's raid content, most will say their favorite fight was DSR, the Dragon Song Ultimate, which is an ultimate based around a lot of the content from Heaven's Ward. That fight, the 70% of that fight was done in Shadowbringers, so even some people would question if that fight was really fully designed in Endwalker. So.
Right. Okay. So I want to know like how like where Russ is at with combat in general as well, but I really want to quickly just ask as well, Ponto. You mentioned that yes, there's homogenization and stuff like that, and yes, things sort of feel figured out and you don't have to think as much, but you also touch on the fact that everything's very well balanced and it's easier to balance these things. That's why when Final Fantasy has to nerf a boss by 1%, people are up in arms about it, because it's like everything's so well calibrated because they can very easily test these things internally. WoW suffers from a major issue where you can't really play what you want to play.
Oh, yeah.
Notoriously. And I know that probably more than most people, where I am quite widely known in the WoW community as being the feral druid guy, as somebody who sits there struggling to get into content. And let me tell you, it is brutal. You can sit for hours and hours and hours struggling to get into content because you're not playing what's hot right now, what's good right now. Do you feel like Final Fantasy back in the day, when things were less homogenized, did they suffer from that meta mindset? And if not, do you think that in the modern world, in modern gameplay, that people probably would fall into that meta of, oh, we can't bring Summoner, bro. It's 50 DPS lower than Dancer, bro, so we can't bring it.
So, A Realm Reborn definitely had metas. For example, bards were very popular. People would put bards in their party. Dragoon was memed on because of, well, more because of class design, and also because of how certain things worked back then. Dragoon's jumps had horrible delay, so very often you could get killed, so you could from jumps. I mean, it's still a little issue nowadays, not as really as much, but back in A Realm Reborn, it was really bad. Taking Dragoon into Titan Extreme back in the day, you're just you're really hitting yourself, to be honest with you, if you're one of those people. There was also back then there was like metas. Monks were very good, I remember too. Magic defense was a thing back then, which is not a thing now. Having the meld, so nowadays melding gear is all about direct hit fight, and it's also about like critical hit, determination, tenacity. That wasn't really a thing back then. Melding was mostly around stats like strength and dexterity and vitality. And then also another thing was a lot of tanks. I was a paladin main back in A Realm Reborn. We used to use maiming set, the Dragoon set. We used to use that on paladin because back then it was about doing more damage to hold heat because tank stances were differently tuned. So there was a lot of things to kind of take into consideration with that.
So which one's better? Like, do you want it to be more like that because you know that people would suffer as a result of that? No, I'm not saying do you want it because people would suffer, but do you want it knowingly, knowing that people would suffer as a result, or is this just sort of the result of the fact that anyone can play anything? Is that things are going to be a bit less interesting?
I think they're trying to keep things as balanced as possible so everyone feels viable. But yeah, when you do the homogenization we're talking about, then the lack of class diversity and the feeling with each class, I would rather have it be what it is now. But from what I've like looked into, I would always look into like older expansions and stuff too. I feel like Stormblood to Shadowbringers period is probably the best period in terms of the actual combat of the game. I feel like they didn't align the whole 2-minute meta. Classes still felt diverse. There were still little unique tidbits to each of them. You know, Samurai, for example, you maybe have heard people complaining about Samurai and the Endwalker. It had this ability called Chitin.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
bring it back.
Chitin. I'm just going to use that as an example of that.
I'm a Samurai main, so I don't, people can be like, oh, bro, you don't get it, bro. It was better back in the day, man. You're missing out.
Chitin felt really satisfying. That little wind up it used to do, and then the big pow. It had a satisfying feel to it. Again, I think that's really the biggest thing. You can balance around things after the fact, but if things feel good to play, that's probably the most important thing for me personally playing any sort of job in the game. I like Warrior the way it is at the minute. There's one or two things I would change, like its invuln, for example, but overall, it plays okay, and it falls easily into this current meta, but I kind of hope they'd make some changes to it because, I don't know. It's one of the ones that benefited from Endwalker. A lot of classes really didn't, in my opinion.
Sure. Yeah, Russ, do you have anything that you want to jump in on there in that discussion?
Yeah, I wanted to mention that we had a similar thing with WoW, with like the stats, like Ponto was mentioning about the stat homogenization. Like back in Classic WoW, you have, like hit chance, crit chance, and all that on gear. And now we just have strength. Like you either, if you're a strength class, you have strength. If you're dex, agility class, you have agility or intellect. And like they're the three. And it just automatically if you change spec, you wear the same gear and it will just change over to your main stat, and then you just have 4 secondary stats: crit, mastery, haste, and versatility. Versatility is flat damage and defensiveness. And then mastery depends on your class. Crit is crit, and haste just makes everything go faster, basically. And you just, like, we have, again, third-party tools where you just look up, oh, what's my highest simming stats? Like, what do I stack, basically? And then you'll just be like, okay, well, I go for crit mastery on this spec, and then a different spec I go for haste mastery, and another spec I go for crit versatility and stuff like that. And there's only those 4 things. That's like really the only thing you have. Ideally, you want to get those your 2 best on every slot. Sometimes the game doesn't allow for that, so you got to get your 3rd best or something, and that's the extent of kind of gearing when it comes to that kind of thing. So it was more interesting back in the day with Classic WoW and stuff, where that, like, there's a good example in Classic WoW that you can play now, and like there was this helmet from Scarlet Monastery, like a level 38 dungeon, or like I think it was a level 37 helmet, and it was almost as good as like a really good like end game helmet, just because it has 1% critical strike chance on it, and it was like a male helmet with like 8 strength, but it had 1% crit on it. And that crit was so good that it would like blow out all these like
because you couldn't get it from anywhere else on that piece of gear. Yeah,
exactly. So until you got like an end game helmet with crit on it, your like leveling up helmet was better than like everything else you found, which is like really weird. But like it made it interesting, and then there was like hit chance, so you could get these like quests. It did, in a way, it made gearing kind of nice, because you could pick up some like end game gear while you were questing, so you could be like kind of feeling like killing 2 birds with 1 stone. But it also meant that if you picked the wrong quest reward because you weren't in the know-how in advance, then you'd miss out on potentially like a really good item that you kind of need if you were going to be pushing or being sweaty or something, right? But yeah, and there was this weapon called Crowd Pummeler, which Sai might be familiar with. It was a feral druid. It was like a level 30 2-handed mace, and it was like the best weapon in the game, even at level 60 for feral druids, because and it had this like on use thing where it increased your attack speed by like 100% or something.
But it only had 5 charges or something, so you'd have to go and farm. Like, you'd fill your bag, you'd have maybe like 10 of them, where you'd have to run this dungeon repeat to get like 10 of them, so that you'd go to raid night and you'd be cycling through
like
these weapons. It was a consumable, but a weapon.
Like it was a consumable weapon, right? And because of how feral druids work, like they attack with their paws, right? They're cats, so they don't use their
meow.
Their weapon was just a stat stick that they'd wear on their back. So if you had like a level 30 weapon or a level 60 weapon, the DPS of the actual weapon itself didn't make a difference to your actual damage, like how hard your paws were hitting or your claws were scratching. So you would just equip this like level 30 weapon because you gain more damage off the on use of like it increasing your attack speed than you would of the actual stat stick that you'd get off a max level weapon. So yeah, people had to go and like farm. I think like Soda Poppin farmed like 80 Crowd Pummelers like in a week, and then he was like, well, at least now I can raid for 3 weeks like before he had to go do it again, right? Because you would just like you're using it every pool at least once, so yeah, it became like a potion essentially, but you'd have to keep running this like level 30 dungeon to go get it. And it wasn't, as well in Classic, like that wasn't an easy dungeon to like, you'd have to stealth all the way through. I mean, it was like easy to kill the boss, but you got like stealth all the way through, and it's this really long windy dungeon and stuff. It was like super deranged way to like to min-max, right? But it's really rough.
People are always going to find ways to sort of do degen stuff, but I think if you could at least make the game interesting in ways to like actually play it, then sometimes it can be okay, but
the moral of the story is don't play Feral Druid, really.
Probably that's fair. That's fair. Right. So I mean, like one thing that we haven't touched on, I don't know if you guys want to maybe very quickly squeeze things in. It's just like story in general in this game, because I feel like we always sort of neglect this on the show. Normally it's because Russ is like just behind me, and I can't really get into like theory crafting of stuff because I don't want to potentially spoil something for him. But do we want to briefly touch on story and just like that as a discussion in general? You guys down?
Can do.
Yeah, I'm down for it, man.
Yeah? Okay. So, I don't even know what sort of like things to get into, but Russ, obviously you're in like 2.2, you said, right? I've just finished. Oh, wait, what? 2.3?
Yeah, just before, like towards the end of 2.3, I think.
Yeah, and I'm just at like 3.2. Just finished. So,
Okay.
I guess like a nice leading question for this and to get your perspective, Ponto, what do you think about first of all, what do you think about Final Fantasy's story in general? Are you big on the story?
I love the story of 14. It's kind of funny because the part that Russ is up to, basically most of Realm Reborn, I absolutely just was not really checked in for it mentally. I was playing the game at the time with my ex. I was really, at that time, all I cared about was raiding and working on my relic weapon, which is all people really did back in a Realm Reborn. Was raid and that. Story, I remember when I was going through it, the base story is obviously, you know, your vanilla cookie cutter, good versus evil, you know. Then you go into post and up to where Russ is. I really hated those first 3 patches as opposed to Realm Reborn, if I'll be honest with you. Did not like them at all. It was filler to me. It was just filler content. Now, where he's about to go into with 2.4, onwards into Heavensward, with the setup of Heavensward, that was all fantastic. That was great. Heavensward is when I came back to the game in 2020. It's what kept me playing. I remember going into post Heavensward and certain parts of post Heavensward are like, okay, all right, I'm full-time streaming this game. I'm not gonna go back to playing what I was playing before. This is what I'm sticking at. This is what I'm doing. I'm just gonna keep at this here. And you know, there's ups and downs like with any story, but the overall package of 14 story, it has absolute whammies. That's why, I mean, look at the category.
There are a few whammies, bro. I've been seeing them.
Yeah,
they pop up now and again. Yeah.
I mean, you can see that people are invested in the story of 14. You look at Twitch, for example, there is people who will tune in and watch Twitch specifically to go onto the 14 section and see people experience the MSQ organically for their first time, like you guys, for example, right now, because they want to see those big hot moments in your reactions.
Cry, streamer, why won't you cry? Why won't you cry?
The emotional vampires, if you want to call them that.
Did you laugh or cry at the lettuce kick?
Me or Ponto?
Yeah, both of you.
I didn't laugh. I was like taken aback. Like I was like, what the hell? Why that? I actually have the best thumbnail.
I laughed at it.
I have the best thumbnail in the business on that one, actually. So I didn't. I didn't cry. I didn't laugh. I sort of. I was startled. Just startled. What about you, Ponto?
Yeah, no, I just laughed at him, dude. I'm not gonna lie. And at that point, I was just like, "Oh, look at that! It's like a football, dude. Look at that."
It is a mean kick, actually. It's a good kick.
I like a kick.
Yeah.
I loved it. No, I was like, no, because I really like the Sylphs, right?
Best part of a Realm Reborn right there.
Oh, wow. That's blasphemy against the Sylphs.
I will say, since you guys are now getting the reworked version of a Realm Reborn, because I'm not sure if you guys knew this here. You probably have heard about this. They did change dungeons and the way they were laid out. I will say you're getting a better version of those dungeons now than what they were when they were there before. There is one or two things which I still wish were still there. There's a solo duty in Base of Realm Reborn with, what was his name? It's like a level 49, level 50 quest. It used to be an 8-man trial, and people used to meme on people with it, being like, oh, you're about to start. It was like the first trial of the game, so it was. Before what they changed it to.
Okay, Westwind.
Yes. That fight, when it first came out, was legitimately really fucking hard.
With Riddleton or whatever, Riddlin.
Yeah. It became a solo duty, I believe, now. When it first came out, it was really fucking hard, actually. But obviously, over time, with gear, people were able to go into it with eye level 130 stuff, which is the item level cap of a Realm Reborn. It just became became a bit of a joke. Anytime a new streamer would go into that part of the story, people in chat would be like,
build it up.
"Oh, you're in for a treat, dude. This is a hard fight.
Finally, the payoff. This is what we've been building to." Like, yeah, they did it to Preach, didn't they? Where they like built Preach up to it, and then he was super disappointed. That was actually the first time in the game. Like, I died. I got unlucky with the mechanic on it. With like, you know, the orbs. They like go towards one side of the room, but they fill that room, and if you're not in that little gap, and I thought I was safe. I was like, oh, I'm all the way over here. But I had to be on the opposite side, so I died, and then you go to do it a second time, and the game is like, do you want to do this on very easy? And you're like, no!
You're not good enough, so it's like, here you go, easy difficulty.
Yeah, I was
actually...
Yeah,
sorry.
go on. No, go on.
I was saying, like, I was actually just editing this video last night. I posted it today, like, my versus Kate Westwind, and I literally died to the exact same thing. And I remember I watched back in the VOD and I go, no, I'm not doing it on fucking very easy. Like, I watched it straight back in the VOD saying that, and I was like, yeah, I feel the same. But like, the fight was good, like now. And I remember, like, I was reading the chat like through when I was editing it, and like everyone's there like, oh wow, this fight's not a joke anymore. Wow, this fight actually looks kind of cool now and stuff.
Yeah, it was a bit of a joke by the end of it. It was really hard when it first came out, though. It used to have this mechanic. I'm not sure what the solo duty's like. I haven't really watched it, but they had this bombing mechanic in the 8-man trial, and it was a joke because people would cheese it with item level gear whenever people could gear up for it. But you had to move the boss around. You had to watch out for ads. You couldn't kill the ads off because they always just respawned more of them. So you always killed one and held one, and they did some serious friggin' damage back then. But yeah, it just became a joke after a while. So it's probably good that they changed it, but they could have just item level scaled it or something.
Well, some of the changes that they've done have been really good. So, for example, in Heaven's Ward, and chat you'll know, and Ponto you'll know, but Russ, I won't spoil it, but I just did the V. In Heaven's Ward, and they've changed that apparently, but it was my favorite dungeon that I've done. Like, it was, done that as well. There's a boss that they changed right at the end. It felt like, it didn't feel like it felt probably like an extreme boss. It didn't feel like a raid boss, but it felt like it had, like epic moments with it. And then there's a fight after that, which is really, really sick as well. So there's, like, they've definitely made some good changes for the better, and I think the story in general for me, like, I've been really cooking, and I've just started doing this thing. So I put a video out yesterday, and I'm gonna put one out tonight as well if I get a chance. But it's my daily MSQ recap. So at the end of take notes, Russ. Right at the end of the stream, if you've done MSQ, never mind, you can stop taking notes. Then you do like a 10-minute recap. You do like a 10-minute recap.
Russ's plate recap.
Yeah, Russ's plate recap. You do like a 10-15-minute recap of everything you've done that day in the MSQ and all the cooking. And then you can sort of throw that up on YouTube for people to stay in the loop of like what's been cooked so far. And a nice little story synopsis. But I've been doing those, or just started doing those, and I want to continue it on into all the future expansions. And I've really been cooking big time now. Like, chat seems really excited with all the cooking I've been doing, and is very like supportive of it. But it feels like the game is, like, now that I'm in Heaven's Ward, there are a lot of sort of different paths that are now being created. And it's hard to follow them all, but in a good way. Like, I'm following one story, and you think that the game's going in a direction with a story, and then they sort of distract you. And it happens constantly where they distract you, and they go, oh, this thing's happening. And then you go and you go, oh yeah, okay, let's go deal with that then. We'll come back to this. And then by the time you circle back around to it, you go, oh yeah, they just distracted me. Yeah, I need to go do that. And then you'll go do that, and then they distract you again. And so, like, it's sort of as they start to reveal things to you, it becomes bigger than it would have been if you'd just been on that one linear path.
Yep.
Because they reveal something to you and then immediately strip it away and go, look at this. And you're like a baby with, like, a toy, right? Yeah, you're like a baby, and they're sort of like, you've got something in your hand and they want it, and they just sort of like, oh, look at this over here, and they grab your attention. So they've been doing really well with that. But the story in general, I think, has just been some really good build-ups. I don't know where you're at with stuff, Russ, and like your anticipation of things and whatnot, but that's where I'm at with it.
I've definitely felt kind of what you're saying a little bit recently with a couple of the patches. Obviously, like Ponto said, stuff's about to kick off probably next week for me. Gonna start building up and kicking off going towards Heavensward now. But yeah, I've definitely noticed. I can't think of the exact example, but the other day I remember like I'd spent like a previous day working on something, and then like they just sent me a quest like going down this kind of tangent, and then you're like, oh yeah, I'll fix all this like family business over here, and then they like pull you straight back, and you're like, oh yeah, this is why it's out on this adventure to begin with, right? And then like something a bit harder kind of hits with that. So like right now we're just learning about like the immortals and stuff like that, with the Echo and like with the Asians and just the immortals like mastering it and things. So I think what is my cooking, like we're gearing up to kind of like perma kill La Habrea at some point.
Oh, did you get the PowerPoint?
Yeah, I just got the PowerPoint.
Yeah, you got the PowerPoint?
Yeah.
Bro, I love the
PowerPoint. I quite like when they do that. I like that they take their time to be like, oh, by the way, in case you forgot all this shit, because you probably did it like a year ago or, like at least 6 months ago or something. And they really just like, for me, I love being like, I know some people find it kind of condescending and like a bit smart-assy, like getting told like a kid, like, why stuff is this way and stuff, but I love it. That's like how I like to learn. I really like it to be broken down bare bones to me and just like over explained to me so I can get it, because I just miss stuff or I forget things. So I really appreciate I was actually saying this like just before we came on the podcast, like today I was like really appreciating that they just go like they even have voice lines or text lines, I guess, not voice lines because ARR, but they have text lines saying like, oh, just in case you forgot, by the way.
Minfilia does that every quest.
Yeah. Like Alfie did it to me today. He's like, by the way, remember all this stuff we told you about?
Stupid streamer, ago? Remember? Come on, pay attention, idiot.
Honestly, you kind of need that, though. I'm one of those people that forgets. Too, man.
I like it. I like it because I'm like, oh yeah, and then it's like my brain starts firing up. I'm like, oh yeah, I did forget about that thing. So yeah, it's really, really nice. I like that they recap that, but I thought the PowerPoint was quite good. it was like, as they kept all walking in, I was like, okay, maybe this is a bit much, but it was kind of funny as well, right? Like, chat were enjoying it, so.
What do you guys think about storytelling features and, I guess, elements of the game? So, for example, right, to sort of give you an explanation of what I mean, I'm looking at World of Warcraft right now. They've just announced their next 3 expansions. They're basically sort of saying, hey, we've failed you in the story. We're going to do our best to correct that. They've got Metzen back on board, which if you don't know who Chris Metzen is, he is basically the father of Warcraft. And he's coming back in to shape things and fix a lot of the issues that they've had with the story. And my immediate question for them is then, okay, well, are you going to revisit the way in which the story is told? Because in World of Warcraft, a lot of the quests, like, first of all, they do a lot of external stuff. So outside of the game, they've got books, which is a lot of the time where you get a lot of information from. But also, even in-game, there's not tons of, like, you don't go into a cutscene and your character's locked one-on-one, and yes, you can read the story at your own pace by clicking through the buttons, but you're like locked in that, right? WoW is you go, click on a NPC, there's a quest text, you click accept, and you go on your way. And sometimes there's like a little panel that pops up with a bit of voice acting or additional dialogue whilst you're questing. And they've gotten a lot better from that since Legion, where they started to implement that as a thing. But I'm wondering if they are going to reevaluate their storytelling devices. I really like the way in which Final Fantasy locks you into saying, hey, we're going to force you to be invested in this story, but if you want to jump out and you want to press escape and skip a cutscene, or you want to just spam click your mouse, then you can. Do you guys like resonate with storytelling devices? Do you think other games would benefit from looking at Final Fantasy storytelling devices? Is there anything that you think Final Fantasy could do better in its storytelling? I guess I'll start with you, Ponto, as you've experienced more of that, and then Russ, you can jump in.
Well, with Blade 14's kind of done its story, they've had multiple writers doing different parts of it. the Heavensward person actually that you're experiencing at the minute, Sai, actually did Final Fantasy 16, the most recent one that came out.
Is this is it Izukawa or Soken or no?
No, Soken's the person who does the music.
He's just music.
Izakaya she's part of.
Is it
Well, she started on the job quest for Dark Knight, and then went on to some parts of later content in Post Stormblood, and then Shadowbringers, then Base Endwalker. I believe Post Endwalker is done by somebody else. I can't remember who exactly it was. But they have different writers, and you can definitely feel the different writing styles in each part of it. For me, it's kind of hard for me to split up the quality. There's very differently told stories in Heavensward and Shadowbringers. They're both incredibly great stories.
Okay.
I would say the overall package for 14 in terms of the storytelling is really well done. Not always consistent. Definitely you'll feel that there in certain parts of the story with certain different writers, but the overall package is definitely preferred in comparison to what other MMOs generally do with their stories. But that was also a thing I kind of experienced with like FF11, which was the first MMO. They did very good job of telling a story in that game, and the limitations of it being a PS2 game that was ported to PC that was also an MMO. It had a lot of restrictions as well, but it told a really good story there too. They're generally they're a company that do story better than anybody else, I would find.
Yeah, they've been doing story for years and years and years and years and years, right? Like that's their main thing. Like the MMO came secondary to that, whereas I guess WoW did the same with Warcraft, right? But
yeah,
they can definitely improve upon that. Like even just small things like having to press escape to skip a cutscene, or having to spam through a bunch of text. Like you build up that like artificial sense of guilt almost, where you feel like you should be reading it, and you know you're missing something important if you're skipping it, right? Whereas in WoW, like it's just one button you click, is like accept, or there's add-ons which will auto accept, auto hand in, so you never even see that screen pop up. It's just like I talk to NPC, now I go to next NPC, and there's like there's a like leveling add-ons and stuff where they put an arrow on your screen that you just follow, like a bot that you just follow an arrow and be like, oh, go over here. Okay, I go over here. I don't know why I'm going over here, but I'm going over here now. Oh,
if only they gave you a PowerPoint presentation, Russ, you'd probably be
yeah.
Honestly,
I'd love it.
All right, I'm in.
Yeah, I mean, I think the story in WoW has potential. It's just told, well, like the means of telling it is bad.
So yeah, I always feel like the means of telling a story is very important, and I have looked into WoW and the way you guys, like I remember with older expansions, if you really wanted to know more about it, you had to read either on like a fucking website, or if you had to read it through some other sort of method in the actual game itself to dig up the lore. It's kind of, you have to go out of your way for it, whereas 14 kind of forces you to look at it unless you hit the skip cutscene button, which on stream is basically sacrilege, you know what I'm trying to say, lads?
I had one time where I was in ARR and I accidentally skipped a cutscene.
You missed nothing, you're fine.
Well, yeah, right? But I skipped a cutscene accidentally. I can't remember why. It was like something where I'd skipped past some quest text or something, and like for whatever reason I couldn't look at the events. I think it was like a mini cutscene, and I can't remember how I skipped it, but I did, and I was like, oh my god, oh shit, freaked out, panicked, and I was like, okay, I'll just skip through this quest so that then we can go back and watch it on. Like, I'll just abandon it, right? And we'll start it again. And then chat was like, you can't abandon an MSQ. And I was like, oh, God. And then I had to go and watch this whole, like, I mean, I'm not going to, I think Russ is, like, almost there. But I had to go and watch a whole nother cutscene that was, like, another 20 minutes to then go back to rewatch the cutscene. And it was, like, a nothing cutscene that I'd missed. I'd missed, like, 2 minutes of like, whatever. And I almost had a breakdown, man. Yeah, it was... I was at a meltdown.
You can alt F4 at the end of the cutscene, and then you can reload it back up for future.
Okay, that's good to know.
I feel bad if I miss like one dialogue line, right? Like sometimes I'm not, like, I remember one specifically. It was ages ago when I first started, and I just kind of like I was like 12 hours into a stream when I did that subathon when I first started. I just kind of like turned off my brain. I was chatting to chat, and I just kind of clicked through a cutscene real quick, and then everyone's just like Scappa, Scappa, and I was like, oh. So then I had to go like down into the event log thing, and I was like reading it
Yeah,
out
the
as
event
if I
log of
was in the
shame,
thing,
you
like,
know.
yes, yeah, and I still accidentally do it. Like if you just tap the mouse one time,
Yeah, I do
accidentally,
that.
and you're like, oh crap, now I need to like bring up the thing and read it all out and try and
Yeah.
like put on the voice and whatnot. But yeah.
What do you guys think then as well? Because even today I was doing a quest which was very heavily influenced by real life feelings and natures of humans, right? So Ponto, I'm in 3.2. So
Okay, yeah.
there's a specific person who is giving a bit of a speech to some individuals, to a crowd, and they're not
I know.
happy. Yeah, you
Yeah,
know.
I know what
So, man, I love talking about story when someone's not done it, and you're like, how do I present
Look,
this to
he's in
everyone
the
else
corner. He's just
listening?
like,
There's a
"Ah."
person that said some stuff to
Yeah.
a crowd in this patch.
Yeah, and someone's like, yeah, bro,
Hey,
got
I
it,
got
man.
you.
Got it, no problem. So I'm there, and that sparked a good conversation in chat today about how, like, I was like, I don't understand how people could be like this. And then, as you start to go through the story, you start to go, yeah, you know what, I can sort of empathize with this. I can see why people might be like this, and it's a lot of real life situations, and those are the stories I find most interesting, is stories where it's things that actual people could do, which is why I've said before I really liked Hawk Manor, because it felt like something that some evil person out there could actually do that, you know, like scarring the faces of girls because they themselves aren't, like, you know, attractive or whatever, right? Like, it's like, whoa, there's some crazy shit, like somebody could actually do that. And what do you guys think about the general sort of like, I guess, political landscape of the story, and the types of stories that are being told? Do they resonate with you? Are you interested in that kind of stuff? Yeah, go on, Russ.
Yeah, I mean, there's like human aspects. I've noticed that they reference like the different regions and stuff being against each other, and you know, you've got the whole like Alamigo stuff in ARR with like refugees it addresses, and then they address like some racism stuff as well, I think towards the end of ARR as well, and it like Minfilia does this whole speech about that. It's like very human and political within the game, I guess, which like I guess makes it resonate more with real life, whereas, you know, coming from WoW, it's like big dragon breathing fire, like it's very much like, okay, that's a bit more fantasy.
Yeah, there's no dragons where I'm at. Yeah.
No, none at all.
Yeah.
But yeah, like they definitely bring in that human element. And I think that it's like it probably exists in a lot of games as well, but honestly, I think they put special emphasis on that kind of stuff quite frequently. And
Sure.
and stuff about like today I did a quest where, you know, I had to go fight against Hoary Boulder in front of the
Hoary Boulder.
Hoary Boulder in front of the kids to like inspire them to be adventurers and stuff like that. So it's like, yeah, I was like, oh, I'm influencing in game now. But
keep an eye out with Hoary Boulder. Actually, whenever he's around, just check the characters around him. Maybe try interacting with them, see what kind of text they have to say. Because there's some good ones, man. There's some questionable ones.
Usually, I'm hunting down like every few quests. Everyone kind of moves around within the Rising Stones now. So I always I'm checking like what's Tancred up to today, because he's a bit sus sometimes.
Yeah, is Alphino still a bitch? Yeah.
Yeah, Alpha. Yeah, I mean that goes without saying, but like I'm like, who's Tancred creeping on today? And then like, what's going on? Like,
oh, bro, just wait. There's such a good moment where Tancred's vibing, and he should not be vibing. Just wait for it. Yeah, it's good.
Right.
Yeah. What about you, Ponto? Anything to add, or are you good?
I think for me personally, I think what you're saying with the human aspect, I think a big part of the reason why you like the human aspect of a story is it's easier to resonate with when you can be like, oh, these are real people too, with real emotions and real drives and things that like motivate them to do something. Like, I felt like you were going through the motions in A Realm Reborn, but they at least had some form of like motivation towards, oh, we're trying to see of this and that. But it was kind of like generic. Whereas when you go into Heavensward and where you're kind of currently at, Sai, there's more specific instances of why are these people doing this and what's their reasoning behind it. And it's like, I don't agree with it, but I understand it.
Yes.
And you'll find that when it becomes more nuanced like that, that's when, for me personally, I got more invested with the story. Heavensward, with a lot of the parts of that there, especially post Heavensward, the second half of it will blow your absolute mind. It's absolutely wonderful.
Wait, the bit that I've not even gotten to?
You haven't gotten to the stuff.
Wait, really?
There's some amazing stuff you're gonna look.
I was like, oh, we're wrapping it up, like cool,
no.
GGs, firm handshakes, we're good to go. Nothing, nothing bad.
Expansion, right, Si?
Is it? I can see why.
And Shadowbringers are always the two popular ones.
Okay, I can see why Heavensward won some awards. Okay, so there's more to go. I literally was like, okay, yeah, like we're all good, man. Like nothing bad's gonna happen. We're gonna round this off real nice. And then literally, like, shit just starts going down. I was like, oh, okay, maybe I was wrong. Maybe
if you haven't cried, then you haven't hit Heavensward's big moments, probably.
Really?
I don't know. If you haven't had some extreme emotional things,
No, but all the NPCs keep telling me to come, so I've done that a couple times.
Cool, that's good.
Well, then maybe you have hit Heavensward, yeah.
Yeah, they just demand it. They demand it of me, so who am I to say no? Matoya as well. Oh boy, when you meet her, dude, it's gonna be buckets, ounces. Okay.
Matoya, oh my god, the hottest lady in that game, dude.
But I won't spoil it. But just wait, okay? Gentlemen, I think we've been going for a good long time now. There was so much that I wanted to touch on, and Ponto, it's been so awesome having you on. It's been really nice to sort of get a sounding board to, like, sort of bounce off and say, are me and Russ just crazy? Like, do we actually know what we're talking about with any of this? And have someone sort of more experience coming in and saying yes or no and why or why not is fantastic. I don't know about you guys. I mean, I know we've been blasting out, but do you guys want to do a quick fire round of some Q&A? Or like, Russ, what I can do is I can direct people over to your stream and you can sort of do a Q&A like you like to do anyway. Maybe Ponto can hang out and chat, or like, do I need to hop off? Yeah, Ponto, do you need to head off, or are you good?
I was gonna grab some food, but I'm chill to do whatever you boys want. It's all good.
Do you want to do like quick
10-15 minutes?
10-15 of Q&A? Yeah? Should we do that?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Russ, do you have anything in your chat to start things off?
I saw one. I think Truck asked if we're gonna plan to do any content together, like midnight level, alliance raids, etc., etc. But I think we kind of touched on that we'd like to. It's more just when we're appropriately at a point that we can, especially me.
Yeah.
Like maybe like we touched on maybe like Savage Coils, but yeah, ideally we want to do stuff that maybe we can hammer down in like a stream or 2 or 3 or something, like where we put on like a bit of a build up and do a show, like
it'd be nice. Maybe we could do something for Christmas, like a Christmas like event or something, like around that time, just something cozy,
Yeah, exactly. I don't know, like, how is FF at Christmas time? Like, not just from a content creator point of view, but I guess just like
pretty busy. Like, when everyone's off, dude, and there's lots of people on. It's a social game. You remember with this MMO, it's not just about the rating. It's the most social time of year, or the most anti-social, which is why we're all online. You could look at it like that. Yeah, you'll see a lot of people on kind of popping off around this time of year.
Yeah. Okay. I can't remember what I was originally saying.
You were saying about
content, raids, stuff.
Wanting to do content together.
Yes, we would like to. I can speak for myself. I would like to do content with as many different FF creators as possible. I think that would be great. I mean, it's in everyone's best interest, content-wise, and I think just having more human interactions with other people who in a similar situation or boat to you, right? Like, you clearly have things in common if you're both streaming the game and stuff like that. Like, I think that shows from FanFest and stuff. Like, everyone got on really well. From what I could see. So, just being able to break through that whole like everyone break out of their separate bubbles where everyone kind of just resides. Like, you know, each streamer's kind of got their bubble in their community and they kind of show up, do their thing. But it's nice when everyone can kind of come together. So I think as much of that as possible for me personally is what I'm interested in doing, and something that I haven't really had the luxury of doing much in WoW, just because of how like the WoW section works on Twitch, I suppose. So I'd say for me, yes, I would like to do some.
Yeah, and I'm always down, dude. I mean, like, I'm even cool. I was even, we spoke about me potentially doing coils with you and stuff, but I'd always be down. I was even thinking of maybe when I get to Heaven's Ward, like, first thing that came to mind when people said that A4S is mega difficult, I was like, oh, maybe, like, I could bring Ponto, and maybe Ponto would be down where we can go in and do it, but it's, like, with a hardcore sort of team, you know, and maybe that could be a plan. So I'd be down for that kind of thing. I'm always sort of down. It's more so whenever other people are also interested, like you say, Russ, when there's a good chance, like, because I don't think we're gonna do, exactly right, but I don't think we're gonna do every single piece of content in every expansion before we continue to the next one, right? So maybe there's something like I can skip a little bit of some of Heaven's Ward, and I can move on with Stormblood and then circle back around when you get to Heaven's Ward endgame, and we can do that thing together. Like maybe we try Savage together, because that would be cool, I think, and we just see how we go, right? And then we can put a cap on it. Then you can't get ahead of me, and then both of us will just be there like spaghetti western, just there in the old Mexican standoff, just neither of us wanting to turn off mid-item level. Well, neither of us letting the other person turn off mid-item level.
Exactly.
Yeah, and like Ponto for sure. Like that would be cool. Maybe we could put something Savage together, and like we said about doing raids together in WoW. Like Ponto, if you ever came over, me, Russ, and you, and whoever else, Ori, and whoever, we could do some raids there. I think that would be really nice. And like you say, Russ, sort of forge bonds as content creators. So yeah, for sure. Yeah. Okay then, so what is your opinion of music in Heaven's Ward? I mean, I'll keep that broad because obviously Russ isn't in Heaven's Ward yet. What I will say is that the music in Ishgard, the main like hub, I think it's called Foundation or something like that. I could be wrong, but whatever the main hub is of Heaven's Ward, the music is incredible to the point where I just want to chill there and hang out in the city just because it's so nice. I think the music in general in a game, like I wish WoW had battle music. I wish it had battle music. I wish it had sort of, WoW has really good music, and I'm played through the new WoW Zone and stuff, and I'm like, this is great, this is fantastic, but having really good battle music, there's something about it that's fantastic. What about you guys?
For me, I mean, Heaven's Ward was when the music started popping off a lot more for me. I remember the very first trial of Heaven's Ward. You'll remember this one. The transition phase, that there was like, holy shit, that's really fucking cool.
Yeah.
That was like really, really cool. Have you done any of the extremes yet for Heaven's Ward?
No. I'm waiting until I finish 3.3, and then I'm gonna jump into optional dungeons, trials, extremes, and then do normal. Yeah. So I'll probably do normal raid like ASAP, so that then I can have a bit of a divide between normal raid and savage. So but yeah, I'll figure something out there.
I will say one thing. You'll find that the normal raids for everything after coils is a lot easier than what you've already done. They learned going into Heaven's Ward to kind of differentiate the difficulty more. You'll find that Savage and Normals for everything from Heaven's Ward onwards are basically two different types of fights. Like there's little trinkets of things that are in there that are similar that they cross over to Savage, but like difficulty level, there is a roulette. It's called the normal raid roulette, which they've added in Heaven's Ward. They don't include binding coils of Bahamut in that, which is why a lot of people never did the binding coils, because it was just seen as a higher level of difficulty in comparison to everything else.
Players just got worse. They aren't as good now as they were 10 years ago. That's what it is, I think.
What can I say, lad? Cut from a different cloth, you know?
I think WoW breeds insanely good raiders.
Yep.
Not all of yous, but yeah.
Well, yeah, not Psy. I mean, he takes off mid level.
Oh. That's kind of dirty there, man. That was kind of dirty.
I'll always get dirty with Psy whenever I can.
Hey?
Sorry, Ponto.
It's okay. It's okay. You're cheating on me. I get it.
Yeah, for sure. Ross, you got any more questions as well?
Yeah, I saw one. What's our opinion on healers being expected to do damage in Final Fantasy compared to WoW?
Oh, can of worms.
Yeah, I think we kind of have that expectation on healers in WoW, almost to the point where healers are now, they're so used to being told to do DPS that they don't heal when it's necessary, which is probably a problem that you end up with in FF as well.
Yeah.
Because they do like quite a considerable amount of damage in Final Fantasy, I think.
The scaling of damage is pretty decent for healers and at 14 compared to WoW, yeah.
Yeah, we had that in the last expansion in Shadowlands, but in Dragonflight it's been much less of a problem. But because like that mindset was hammered into people so hard in Shadowlands, now that they're trying to move away from it, everyone's so accustomed to like do damage all the time.
Like, bro, I've got to heal. What the hell,
Yeah,
Blizzard? And it's like you're
what
playing
the
a
fuck?
healer.
You're expecting me to heal, yeah. And now people get upset about having to heal when they play a healer instead of like, I know they just thought that they were playing a DPS that their DPS didn't matter as much on or something. So it's really weird. Blizzard like actively said, "Oh, we want healers to heal more, so we're making everything more intense to heal." And then people are like, "Whoa, now I can't do DPS." Like it's like you're gonna lose a little bit of damage, but in your team now it's like 5% instead of 20 like it used to be or something. So yeah, people get really hurt about it in WoW. But I think it's a fine thing.
It's one of the roles, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's just part of your like role like requirements or whatever, like expectations. Yeah, personally I don't have too much of a problem. What about you guys?
Go on, Ponto.
Kind of an issue. For me personally, I feel like 14, it's another thing I didn't really touch on earlier. I feel like everything in 14 plays like a DPS. Tanks are a DPS, healers are a DPS, DPS is DPS. And I'm overly big fan of it. I feel like healers, especially kind of what you were mentioning earlier, there's such a focus on them doing DPS. I feel like this game is very kind on healers because it's sort of like it caters around the fact that they don't have to heal too much. Like there's windows where they heal, and I don't feel that the healing is overly intense, and then they can DPS. And they cater around it by adding more and more OGCD buttons. It's like, oh, this is gonna come up. Well, here's an OGCD. It's all like, I'll give you an example. White Mage. People like are outraged if they have to use anything outside of a Blood Lily on their White Mage after like they hit like end game. It's like, oh my god, I have to use a GCD heal here? What? It's like, oh my god, I meant to be glaring and using damage here. What's going
healing
on?
in only your OGCDs and damaging in your GCDs.
Yep, that's exactly it, man. It's like, oh, I should be building up. And then the other thing is they're expecting people to be burning their Blood Lilies to heal, because by hitting a certain amount of Blood Lilies, then you can do more damage because there's a big burst it can do. So it's just all about DPS.
I think really. That sort of is like the inevitable nature of... I think a lot of that extends down from the top end, where people look at the best players in the world and go, well, these DPS and tanks are like self-sustaining because they're actually knowing when to press a defensive and when to use Addle and Feint and shit, and like... Well, I mean, obviously not in WoW, but you know what I mean? That they actually know how to play, so they need less healing, so they DPS. Like, for example... I was quite, like, I played with another guy as Mark, and we were quite popular in doing these no healer keys, like no healer dungeons in WoW, and we go to very high level dungeons without a healer, and we just take 4 DPS and a tank, and we got a lot of, like, there's a lot of stuff from people going like, oh, you're gonna kill off the role of healing, and yada yada yada, like this, now healers are gonna get invited to even less content, but a lot of this stuff that people look at trickles down from the top, I think, where they look at these players and go, oh, well, I don't need to heal those players, so I shouldn't have to heal my group. And it's like, well, no, because the average player doesn't know when to use their defensives right and cycle those, and they don't know to avoid that mechanic and whatnot. So you do have to heal them, and then healers get really weird about having to heal because they think in their head that they shouldn't have to heal. But yeah, I don't know. For me, I kind of like how Astro played in Ifrit, where every global I was using on a heal, and I was maintaining my dot, and then I was healing every single global, And then outside of that, I was buffing my group. So I don't like healers DPSing. I would much prefer for healers to be a healer that can buff the group. Because then it's like, I just feel really weird about the idea of DPSing as a healer. Like, if I wanted to DPS, I would be a DPS. But like, that is something, if healing in Final Fantasy remains the way that it was for me on Ifrit Extreme, then I will play a lot of healing. If it changes to...
spoil that for you.
Sorry?
It doesn't. It doesn't.
It doesn't?
No, it doesn't.
If I'm just going to be doing DPS rotations on an Astro, then I'll just blow my brains out. I'd rather just go play DPS. Like, what's the point?
Yeah, it's one of the biggest reasons why I never really found healer that interesting in 14. It's very, it's basically a DPS with a couple extra steps. So it's I don't know. It was different back in A Realm Reborn, but yeah, I think this is also a thing I heard about from Stormblood onwards. The design philosophy of healer became more DPS heavy by around that point, and it's definitely came into like Endwalker as well.
Yeah. Sure. Well, there you go. By the way, I do love, Ponto, how diplomatic you are in all of your answers. Me and Russ are still so new to Final Fantasy that we'll just say any shit that we think. We'll criticize anything, anyone, doesn't matter. Ponto's like, well, I saw a video where a certain individual said a thing, da-da-da-da-da. Like, you're very diplomatic. We'll just be like, yeah, Russ talking shit, bro, and like, that guy, you know.
The people know these people. That's the thing. Like, for example, if I bring up the video about, oh, there was a guy, he's like, go here and complete, you know, whatever mechanic, or, you know, stand and resolve. People already know what I'm talking about. I don't have to go into any further out there.
It's funny, actually, I asked Zeno, I'd put a video out, and in that video, I think it's like why WoW players should, like, or why you should try FF14. Like, if you've played other MMOs, it's mainly was targeted at, like, WoW players that they should try FF, but in it, I use a clip of Zeno where he's, like, raging about I can't remember I don't know what boss it is, but it's like a 1% wipe, and he's like, this is fucking bullshit, like, he's going off, and I put it in the video, and then I had to, like, go message Zeno, and I was like, yo, bro, do you mind if I, like, use this clip of you? And he was like, yeah, bro, sure. Absolutely. Like, yeah. But I was like, I should probably check, like, I don't want to make this guy look bad or something like that. And he was like, nah, fucking send it. So, cool. But,
I know exactly what thing you're talking about.
Yeah.
DPS check of PAS, Phase 1 in week 1, because he was forced.
Yeah, because he killed
Warrior
it,
to Gunbreaker. They killed it, but he had to be forced off Warrior and play Gunbreaker, because at that point the DPSs between the tanks were a little bit. It was basically Gunbreaker, Dark Knight, and nothing else if you want to hit them after that there, because that week 1 was pretty fucking bad.
Yeah, for sure. Right, well, gentlemen, should we probably just call it there? Call it there. You guys cool to end in there?
Yeah.
Good? Yeah, excellent. All right, so I'm glad we managed to somehow squeeze in that healers aren't people. We managed to squeeze that in to the podcast, so very well done,
right
gentlemen.
At the very end.
We almost escaped this podcast without dogging on healers, but we managed to squeeze it in. No, we love our healers. We love our healers, and we hope that you get to play the game the way that you want to. Actually, when I did do Ifrit, I was like, maybe like DPS could adjust for us, and like us healers can just stand and heal, like da-da-da, and everyone's like, fuck off. They're like, no, not when you were DPSing, I was adjusting as a healer, and I'm like, all right, fine, I'll learn to adjust. You're right. So I did. But yeah, no, good content. Gentlemen, thank you so much. Ponto, anything that you want to say before you head off? I just want to say on mine and Russ's behalf, thank you so much for coming on. You're our first guest, and it's been really cool to sit down and chat with you. Obviously, it was great to meet you at FanFest. I'll link your channels in my chat. I'm sure Russ will do the same. And Mods can probably do showers. Yeah,
go
perfect.
Follow Ponto.
There we go. So definitely, if you've not heard of Ponto or not seen his content, then there you go, Sam. Going live later. There you go. Ponto, anything that you want to say to before you go?
To be honest with you, lads, I'm just glad you decided to bring me on. I'm glad for the invite. I don't really do these sort of things very often. I'm looking to get into the podcast spectrum here in the next couple of months, actually, and it's nice getting on here and bouncing off people and kind of getting the vibe for it. I'm very, as you can kind of tell, very laid back about stuff like this. Loved hanging out with you both at FanFest. Honestly, wish we could have spent more time together, honestly. Kind of sucked we couldn't get more tickets, but next time, and we'll maybe find other opportunities to hang out anyway outside of that.
100%.
Just need to be FanFest, right?
100%.
No, but I just want to say thanks for bringing me on. To the people who are watching, hope you guys enjoyed it. If you disagree with me, you're wrong. You suck.
Nice. Don't worry, I'll cut that from the pod. Perfect. Yeah, no, thank you so much for being on. Rusty, anything you want to say to Ponto before we dip, or you cool with that? Yeah.
Yeah, I'm all good with that. It's been nice to hear him talk about some more like serious topics for once, other than butt
For
plays.
once?
Yeah, for once. Yeah.
You listen to me every day, sir. I'm a very serious content creator. I have no clue what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Excellent. All right. Well, I will. I'll do the sign off. Thanks everyone for watching Between Two Sprouts, episode 5. Join with Ponto, and we'll be back in 2 weeks with another episode with maybe another guest. We don't know yet, but we'll see. Perfect. Right. That concluded. Now we can sort of do whatever we've got to do. Russ, we've got to pick someone for the next hosting, right?
Yeah.
Oh, everyone clapping in game as well. That's so cool to hear. Yeah. Thanks.